Here.
Here.
Here, everyone please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. On the agenda is a question, and Jim's not here yet, so I guess defer it, but as I was preparing for the meeting, it was my understanding that tonight we would actually have a resolution that would be calling for scheduling a public hearing for the COSM admission to the water district. I noticed there wasn't one, so, you know, because we had a presentation last time, I think all the documents, right, Barbara, were filed correctly? So that was what we're waiting for. So we, you know, subject to that, you know, when we get to it, when Jim comes, I think probably have a resolution off the floor more or less to address that, okay? But other than that, I don't have any other changes. Does anybody else have anything?
No.
Bill? Okay, thanks. And do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion is approved. Okay, we'll come to it after we approve the minutes. You know, so do I have a motion to acknowledge the minutes of January 10th?
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor? Any nays or abstentions? Seeing the motion approved. Jim, you know, my question is I recall that at the last meeting, when we had the discussion with COSM and Brian James, I think, yeah, Brian's here. You know, all the materials have been filed, so the intention was tonight to schedule a meeting for the public hearing.
Yeah, the only thing is, for purposes of scheduling the public hearing, we need to calculate the buy-in fees.
Okay.
And we had the flows Thursday night after the agenda closed. So we should have those by the next meeting.
But we won't have resolution meetings until the end of February. Is there any way to calculate that, you know, approximately, so we can get that in? You know, I mean, we can defer this, you know, a resolution on this to the end of the meeting, okay? But if we can, and maybe Tim, you know, I
The
don't
only
know.
note I had from John Bodendorf was we were waiting on the map planning report from.
We got
Burgess,
that,
so-
right? Anyway, let's see what we can do, and, you know, we had that discussion, Jim, right before you came, so.
Okay.
Why don't we do that? By way of comments tonight, some public service announcements, and I welcome my board members to join in when I'm done, particularly Councilman Beal. But with respect to, you know, COVID, you know, we are, I want to remind everyone, don't let up your guard, because we are still seeing, you know, significant amount of cases, although overall, you know, there's been a steady decline. And County Executive Molinaro reported on that today, and that means that currently throughout the county, we have just slightly over 1,900 active cases. This is down from when we had our last board meeting at 7,221, so it really is a significant decline. And the hospitalizations are down as well, but most regrettably, unfortunately, the number of deaths continue to rise. Since our last meeting, 31 people have passed away. So we're still seeing, primarily when you look at the statistics, and I think Bill can add to this, but is that what we're seeing is largely senior folks, whether or not they're vaccinated, but with a number of serious comorbidities. In other words, they have a number of other serious ailments, and that's what's really contributing to the serious numbers as to hospitalizations and deaths in the county. You know, so we continue to encourage everyone to follow what they've been doing as far as practices. You know, get vaccinated where, you know, you don't have any reservations on doing that. And, you know, looking after particularly the seniors, I think the age groups where it was most severely hit has been the, you know, 72, 78, 80 years old, you know, residents throughout the county. So I want to encourage everyone to continue to do that. Be conscious of the fact that, people, I think in those categories, 39%, approximately 39% of folks that have contracted it and then also died, had been vaccinated. And 2 fatalities were boosted individuals, but they were at the age of 80. So the seniors have been, very much heavily affected. So please look after our senior residents. The vaccination and testing kit programs continue. And over-the-counter test distribution right now, this week, as we're looking at January 26th and Friday, January 28th, 26th at Dover High School, there's limited 2 kits per vehicle. It's going to be drive-through. And on Friday at the Dutchess County Fairgrounds, again, drive-through, 2 kits per vehicle. We're looking at, and Bill can probably update us a little bit, but possibility, it looks like new kits might be received by the end of the week, and then distributions at municipalities, but I'll let Bill fill that in next week. But we don't have any information yet, so stay tuned on that. J.C. Penney continues to test, people. And that's the second floor, the upper deck. And it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from, Tuesday through Friday from 1 to 7, and Saturdays 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Both rapid and PCR testing is available there. Pre-registration is preferred at J.C. Penney. Also, there will be upcoming booster clinics at J.C. Penney. And that's on Tuesday, tomorrow, January 25th, Thursday this week, and Saturday. Tuesday will be 1 to 7, that's Moderna and Pfizer. Thursday, 27th, 4 p.m. to 7, that's Pfizer and J&J. And then Saturday, January the 29th, 9 to 12, that will be Moderna and J&J, for the boosters. Also, the county, as part of the major infrastructure, we're looking at high-speed internet access. We'll be posting all this information on our website as we always do, but there is a survey that's being undertaken right now by the county for home and business with internet and without internet. That information's available. I won't read it here, but we'll post this on our the website. It's available through Dutchess County, New York. There's a high-speed internet access survey. And for without internet, there's emailing, to Dutchess County. So that is kind of a form brochure, poster that we've gotten through the county. So it's very important as we try to increase better communications throughout the entire county going forward. And last but not least, as to public service announcements, I have received a note from, the Mid-Hudson Chinese, community. This is called the Mid-Hudson, in this case, Chinese Language Center. They're actually now offering new courses, adult Mandarin, courses. And as we know, China is very much in the news, and it's not as much about the language as it is also the culture. And, we're trying to promote more. We're going to be doing some other Heritage Month, programs, later on in the year. So I'll post this information. I have Joey, post this information as well on the internet. So Bill, would you like to make a few comments on some of the things I mentioned?
So we're still navigating COVID. We've gone from 8,300 case high down to about 1,900, but that number is somewhat relative because there's people testing themselves at home that aren't reporting the positives. Bottom line is everybody knows somebody that had COVID at this point. Many of us, not me, but many people in this room probably had COVID, whether you knew it or not. It's out there. We still have to be vigilant against it. 99% of us will get sick and be fine, but it's that 1% that have the vulnerabilities and immunodeficiencies that are the real potential problem. So tragically and unfortunately, the death count continues to rise. It's slowed down significantly, but every life lost is a tragedy. So we continue to do our part. I'm hoping that as we get into springtime here in the next couple months, we're going to be on the back side of this, but I've said that 3 times before, I think, sitting here. This particular variant right now, as you know, is highly contagious. And we hope that this is going to be the virus's way of creating some level of herd immunity, but that is still to be seen. That said, from a county perspective, the county distribution points, as the supervisor mentioned, will continue for the next week. We hope that the state is going to provide test kits to the counties to distribute to municipalities again. I know there has been some discussion about us receiving a shipment this week at the end of the week, but I am the person that receives all these shipments, and most of the time the shipments don't come when they're supposed to come. So I don't have a shipment until I have it in my hand. I will say that I wouldn't even count on it this week, maybe early next week, maybe. The schools were supposed to receive additional kits today and tomorrow. That was canceled. So, you know, it all depends on which way the wind is blowing at certain times on when the deliveries arrive. That said, Dutchess County has invested and purchased 100,000 kits so that they can be distributed to the municipalities for distribution, as we have been doing. Unfortunately, 90,000 of that 100,000 has been rerouted to the federal government because of the U.S. Postal Service federal government mailing campaign that's going on. So if you go to covidtests.gov, covidtests.gov, you can order your kits. They will send you kits to your household. Unfortunately, they have come to realize that if you live in a multi-dwelling, there's only one address point, and the system doesn't recognize multiple residents. So that's a challenge. But you can go to that site and order your kits. We actually went to the site last week, the day before it was announced, and kits were received today. So it's actually moving, well, the first week it's moving quick, and we'll see where that goes. But that said, we are continuing to press the state and the feds to keep those kits coming. And, you know, people ask me, well, you know, what's the big deal with the kits? The kits are there for folks to test themselves, to identify if they're positive, and isolate. Because the big issue that's happening is people may be positive and not know it, and they're out doing their normal routine and they're infecting people. So the kit objective is for you to understand that you are positive and isolate yourself so that you don't get your family and friends sick inadvertently. That's the whole idea with the kits. That's basically the latest information. And again, if you have any questions that are specific to COVID from a county perspective, feel free to talk to me after the meeting. Town perspective, talk to the supervisor, and I can tell you that this town is turning these kits over as quickly as possible. I will be biased and say that we have turned these things around quicker than any other municipality. I mean, you're talking, we get them, you know, by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're going out in the morning at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. So that's about as quick as it gets. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Next will be the controller's report. Frederick, would you come up and give us a review of 2021 year-end review? And, you know, please, you know, speak, you know, loudly rather than softly.
I'll try.
Okay.
All right, so thank you very much. I will present an overview of the 2021 financial report of the town of Wapinja. First of all, let me start by saying that when we did the 2022 budget, for the first time we had a structural balanced budget because for the past couple of years we have been using fund balance in order to finance part of the operations. But last year for 2022, for the first time, we did some restructuring, and we were able to balance our budgets in 3 major funds without having to appropriate any fund balance. So that was a good thing. So let me proceed by reporting that 2021 ended fairly strong in terms of the receipts, revenues that we realized, the expenditures that we spent on. And just to give a few examples, for 2021 we had a challenge in the fines and forfeited bail. I remember because the court was not operating fully, we were receiving 40% or 50% or 30%. In fact, there was even a month in April that we didn't receive any revenue. But I was surprised that by the end of last year, 2021, we were able to actually surpass our budget. We had a surplus of almost 75,000. So that was some very good work to the Justice Court employees and the town as a whole. The other revenue item that really surprised me was mortgage tax. And we were all receiving these reports from Dutchess County on a monthly basis as to what we were receiving. Some months it would be low, but overall, when we look at what we budgeted for and what we received at the end of the year, or what we're going to receive, because we normally get these revenues twice a year in June and December, I'm happy to report that for the year 2021, we will realize 1.2 million in mortgage tax out of only a budget of 450,000. We have received some of the money, but we'll receive the rest in June. But I'm certain that that will come. And this is just the net funds, not just the gross. Because if you add all the receipts in gross amounts, it's 1.3 million, but usually they deduct some expenses.
And when you say we know it will come, it's because we have already received the reports on that,
Yes.
showing the amounts of money
Right.
that we're due. It's just a matter of timing of when we get it. So we know that that is coming.
Right.
So we already have the 868, 928 in the bank.
Yes.
We've got roughly, I'll say net, another 337K to go to get us to the 1.2 million. But we haven't received all that, correct? So that's what we're expecting in June, the balance, correct?
Correct.
And that's all part of your factoring in what the fund balance
Yes,
will
I
be?
did
So you've assumed the 1.2 is going to be received. That's what you use for your fund balance
Yes. so-
calculation? Okay.
Right. So the 1.2 million is included in projecting our fund balance at the end of the year, which I will show you on page 2. When we were looking at rental of real property also, we were fortunate enough to exceed our budgeted amounts. And even though this is just a modest amount, at least 5,000 in excess of what we budgeted for. Other revenue items that we had a surplus for include building permits to the tune of approximately $10,000. Safety inspection fees.
And I'd like to just mention, and I'm sure that all the other board members agree, is that thanks to our building department, Barbara Roberti and her team, for excellent work, particularly in catching up with a tremendous workload in getting us to that point.
Yes, indeed. Other revenue items that we've had a surplus on, safety inspection fees, $43,000. Zoning fees, $12,000, among other things. I also want to report that in the CHIPS, this is money that we get from New York State for the paving of our roads. Even though we had a budget of only $220,000, when we sent in the request for reimbursement, which was about $500,000,
Right.
they were able to reimburse up to $433,000, which was made up of CHIPS, Pave New York, and extreme winter recovery.
So if you looked at CHIPS money, the budget was 220,
Yes,
and CHIPS money specifically is 292,000 of the 433, correct? So we get two other reimbursements from the state. One is the extreme winter, and also one is for, I guess, for paving. And that makes up the difference between, I'll call it the 292 for CHIPS money and the 433, which we don't budget for because we don't know what that's going to be, correct? Okay.
yeah, no, we don't budget for that. But we use the same line in reporting it because we only have one line for improvement of road with the CHIPS line. So all that money go into that line.
And historically, we've been conservative on that because
Yes.
Right.
based on the financial position of the state, sometimes we get the Pave New York money, sometimes we won't.
Mhm.
So that varies from year to year. The CHIPS money is actually a don't know if 100% of it, or at least a portion of it, is from federal highway funds.
Moving on, there's this other revenue item, which is the federal aid that was issued to us by the federal government from the ARPA Act. Now, this money, we received about 1.1 million in the summer of 2021, and they said that we are going to receive the next batch, the remaining 50% in summer of 2022. The eligible uses for this money include investment in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Now, my only concern is that as of now, we have not identified where this money should be used, and they're already writing to us that we need to send a report, at least that will be due by April 30th, 2022.
So during our February workshop on the 14th, this is one of the topics that we'll be discussing.
Right.
So how detailed of a report do they want as far as saying what the money, the 1.1 is going to be spent on? Because it's probably going to carry over, I would guess, because we get the same amount in 2022,
Right.
which we're going to have to do the same kind of format in April of 2023. So how detailed does the report need to be? As an example, you're going to do highway garage, just making it up, but highway garage, you have, A, B, and C projects you're going to do, it's worth 500,000. So are they looking for just a high level, or what are they looking for? How detailed do you have to be, I guess, is the question.
I haven't really gone into how detailed this, like some guidelines which they have put out there, which I have.
Okay.
I think so long as the town board can make a decision as to where to spend the money, then that will be all that we need, so that we can start.
The Treasury Department has some guidance on it.
Right.
As to, I want to say it came out in September and then November. I
Right.
think they revised it. And I don't know, I'll have to go back and look at it. I don't know.
Yeah, we should
we'll
take a
have
look
that
at
for
it
our February
for the
meeting, our
February
workshop.
14th meeting.
Yeah.
We should know
Yeah.
what
On
we
the
can
14th.
spend it on, like if it's
I mean,
engineering
it-
charges or whatever,
It-
for a project we're looking to
Right.
do, we should be able to see if that's applicable or
Yeah,
not.
I mean, I think I don't believe it's applicable to road programs or bridge programs.
Okay.
Or I should say, I know it's not.
Okay.
Another municipality, there was a question as to whether or not they could use the money for bridges. Basically, I believe it's limited to water and sewer type projects or any projects, capital projects related to COVID services.
Correct.
Okay.
So, theoretically, if you had a bridge near a hospital that, or roads near a hospital and that would improve access to the hospital, theoretically you use it for those purposes. But at least in this round of funds, for the money we received, there's some limitations. There's also funds coming down the pipe with respect to the infrastructure bill, which is going to be available for roads, bridges, water,
Okay.
sewer, and in those cases,
As long as we have the criteria for the
Right,
meeting on the
we'll have that
14th,
on the
that's fine.
14th, yep.
But the
Okay.
only problem is on that, we don't know what money we're getting yet, and how it's to be distributed, whether it's coming through the state.
For the infrastructure.
The infrastructure. bill.
Infrastructure, this we know.
Yeah,
So the COVID money reporting is probably to make sure that we're planning on spending the money on something that is allowed under
Right.
the provision. So that's
Right.
probably what they're looking for. They may not be looking for very specific information, but my experience with federal grants is there's quarterly reporting at times to make sure that your plan is consistent with what the target is for the money. So we
Yeah,
can.
I mean, I think that in looking at it, I just scanned it, but basically what they're looking at is to check the purposes. That you can also use it for income replacement. So for example, loss of revenue out of the justice court, theoretically, you could use it for that. You can use it for various purposes. But it's got some targets, which is part of the reporting.
I think we can discuss further at the
Yes.
workshop.
That's
I agree.
I also think, and just while we're talking about it, I also think, we can discuss it as a town board at the workshop, but I think we should also have a provision by which the public can provide input.
Sure.
So that it's fully transparent.
Yep.
If they have thoughts on what we should focus this funding on, I think the public should have an opportunity to provide that.
Agreed. Go ahead,
In a
Frederick.
summary, the revenue amount that we have received in our major funds, the first one being the general townwide fund, A fund, 99% of the money has been received. In the B fund, 71% of the budget, and this is mainly because of the sales tax, which we receive every 3 months. So we haven't received the revenues from September through December. 4 months is still missing, so that's why we are at 71%. We know that the sales tax from September to November will be received end of this month, January, and then the rest will be end of April 2022. Highway, 104% of the budget has been received. Moving away from revenues into expenditures, so even though we did well with the revenues, we have had to come before you to make some budget amendments where we were not able to, where our budgeted lines for expenditure was not adequate. So in the general townwide A, we had to increase the budget by about $664,000. In the B fund, we have had to increase the budget by about $118,000, and in the highway, we have had to increase the budget by about $201,000. In summary, expenditure-wise, we have spent 90% of the modified budget, that is the budget after adjustment from the adopted. B fund 86%, and in the highway 82%. Looking at our cash balances at the end of 2021, townwide we have 1.6 million, B fund 5.3, highway 3.6, ambulance, lighting, water funds total 1.3, sewer 2.9. Capital, we have money that we received from the issue of the bond, which was about 5 million, and also issue of the bond and special note about $1 million, and also the money from the federal government, from the ARPA Act, which we haven't utilized yet, 1.1 million. That's why we have about an amount of 7.2, although there's one that I missed out in the Chase Bank, about 493,000. This was the money that was issued initially by the New York City DEP. So they told us we had to open our own account for the Wapinja Water Main project. All right. So once the projects were completed, there was a phase 2 of the project, the Chelsea Service Water Connection, and that is where the money still is. Planning, zoning, and road inspector escrow funds in the PCSB Bank, 474. And then in Mayo Park, we have other trust and agency accounts, including the Parkland Trust Fund, where we have a 432,000. Now, there was a question raised about there's a resolution that was passed this year that we should not have more than 5 million in one bank account. But I think, as was pointed out, that we are adequately collateral for these monies. In other words, if the banks were to go under, not only are we FDIC insured, but then we would get our money in full because of those collateralized deposits. So we get a statement every month from this, from Chase, from PCSB, saying how much that our funds are covered by collateral. Now, but as you can see, initially all our monies were in Chase Bank, but we have been trying to move as much money away from one bank as possible, and that's why we opted for the PCSB Bank, where most of our monies are also in. Sometimes I think it is difficult just to open bank accounts for the purpose of meeting that resolution. but I believe it's something that can be revised. I believe so long as we have adequate collateralization, we should be okay. And the New York State law, I believe, requires that the funds be collateralized. That is why even those banks try to meet those requirements before for all the deposits of municipalities. Concluding with the projected fund balances in the townwide A fund 1.6 million, B fund 5.6, and highway 3.4 million. So this is just an interim report. Of course, we are still receiving bills coming in. We are still expecting some revenues, as I've mentioned. So I believe later on, when all the transactions are in, we should be able to update these numbers. But this is where we are currently.
So all of these fund balance that you have here have assumed that some level of billing for 21 is coming in early first quarter 22, so you've taken that into account?
Yes, what I did was for the estimation of fund balance, apart from adding the mortgage tax, which is the only thing I added, I didn't add any other thing because I know for sure mortgage tax is coming.
Well, that and the sales tax, right? So you added the sales tax, mortgage tax.
Yes, exactly.
And then what you also
And
took
then-
into account was all the
yeah.
accounts payable that,
Right, yeah.
bills
So what I did
potential out there
was
that you know of.
assume that, you know what, we're going to spend as much as we spent last year. But in addition, I added 250,000 and for, additional expenditure on the A fund, and about 81,000 on the B fund is the DB that I just left. Right? So these balances have those additional expenditures. That
Okay.
yeah. So that's the conclusion of my brief report.
Anybody have any questions you'd like to raise?
can we just talk about Parkland Trust for a moment? Sure. Do you have Parkland Trust there?
Yes.
You can talk to it? So I know the supervisor and I talked for a couple of minutes today, and Frederick, you and I talked later on, but one of the issues we had was we thought that there was a little bigger opening balance, roughly 600,000 in that, going down to around 430 or so. So I know that we talked about a difference, so if you want to just kind of explain it to the other board members what the difference is.
At
'Cause
the
our-
end of 2020, we had 611,000. And then at the end of the 2021, because of approved spending on the parks, about 58,000.
Yeah, so the two parks are roughly 29,000 apiece,
Yeah,
so you
yes,
take 58 off,
58,000.
take the 611, get you
That's
to
how
roughly
you
the
get the
552 number he's using as
552,000.
as his
Okay.
opening balance. Now, some of these projects, right, like Spook Hill as an example, right, so in order to get the recovery for the 100,000, you submitted the paperwork for the reimbursement. We haven't got that yet, correct?
Yes, I haven't got received the reimbursement. I know we have applied for reimbursement for Spook Hill. It's in progress, but that is the only one. But I have not received the money, so I just wanted to show everything in here that, okay, the board approved spending of this amount, but we expect the money from Dutchess.
And what about the Challenger Field? Did we submit any paperwork for the reimbursement on that?
Yes, we have spent money also on this one, but we have not submitted for reimbursement yet, so this might take a little bit more time.
Bill, we had filed a number of claims for Robinson Lane, I think 80,000 or so to FEMA. When's that, if it's going to be ever issued? You
That's
know?
IDA? Those are IDA?
Yeah, IDA, yep.
Did you get anything back from FEMA on that, or no?
No, we have not, but we are currently working on that, Steve, with FEMA people. So we are meeting or talking to them every week at 11 o'clock on Wednesday about the same project. The only concern is most of the work has not been done, although we have estimates. So I know Steve had received some estimates for the work. So if those can be approved so that the work can be done and the parks repaired, so that when we submit something, at least we have backup of what we have spent the money. So right now we are still just saying, okay, this is going to cost this much or this much.
So then during our workshop, let's make sure we discuss that along with other parks, recreation needs. But I think, to Steve's, credit, that came just before, the rains inundated the parks. He couldn't get equipment there, and now we have winter, which is a further problem. So I think
Yes, yes.
from the board's point of view, at our workshop, then we can be planning on what we need to hit the ground running, for Steve as the grounds thaw, right? I
Yeah.
think that's what we want to do.
So the biggest challenge on FEMA PA, is you can restore the asset or restore the property to pre-disaster conditions, right? Now, one of the problems that across the country with PA is they restore it back to pre-disaster conditions, then you get the same storm again, and
Yeah.
it does, there's no mitigation aspect to pre-disaster conditions. So we got to discuss this in the workshop. If we build back exactly the way, whatever the structure or whatever the land was, are we benefiting the town, or are we setting ourselves up for
Correct.
another problem?
Failure.
And if we are setting ourselves up for another problem, there is a component called disaster mitigation funding where we can get money from the federal government for shovel-ready projects. The problem with mitigation funding at the moment is that mitigation funding is money that is left over from other disasters across the country, right? So there's a pool of money, and it's available for municipalities that have mitigation plans, which we do, but it's leftover money. And because we've been in COVID now for almost 2 years,
Right.
the question is, what federal funding will be left over
Right,
after
exactly.
COVID and all these other disasters to be available for mitigation funding? So it's kind of a round-robin type thing, so we'll have to have a discussion at the workshop on what approach we want to take. Sometimes it's better just to correct the problem using either Parkland Trust or using fund balance or whatever. And sometimes, believe it or not, it makes more sense to just do it ourselves rather than restore it to exactly the way it was, where it's going to be waiting for another storm event.
But clearly, we need to do something
Yeah.
before baseball season starts, right? Because there are conditions there that we have to correct, remediate.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did probably a couple months ago, Frederick, and you'll remember this, and I think the board will too, we allocated about $100,000 to
Right.
kind of help
That's
mitigate this until we get FEMA money back. I think we spent about $7,000 against that. So what we asked you to do, or I asked you to do, is put the other $93,000 into a capital account so that we make sure that we pull that out of fund balance, but you've got that money set aside so that when we're ready to go, shovel-ready, we've got the money ready to go and do dugouts, fields, whatever else we need to do, clay,
Yeah.
et cetera. So, I think we've pretty much outlined what the $100,000 going to be for specifically, but we've already set that money aside. So we can be shovel-ready as soon as,
So I
You
think
know,
at our
early spring.
workshop, we'll
yeah, that's fine.
finalize something on that, plus some other, parks,
That's fine.
recreation projects, right, relating to our fields and the
Now,
various.
let me just say this, though, and we've been through this before. You can't count on that FEMA money, right?
No.
That FEMA money, which you may or may not get, can come 2 years later. It could be a different town board sitting here by the time that money rolls in, which is what happened on the
The
last
winter
time.
one, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so we have to just look at the priorities, the short-term priorities, address them. The FEMA money will be gravy down the road. We can't
Well, to me,
depend on it.
that's gravy money if you get it. The assumption is we weren't going to get it. If you get it, that just reimburses the
Exactly.
100,000 we set
Exactly.
aside. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Frederick? Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Frederick.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yep.
we appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, what I'd like to do is open the public portion of the town meeting. This time, do I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion is approved. If anybody has any comments on any items on our agenda, please come on up to the podium and identify yourself and state your comment, question.
Hi, I'm Marcy Weidman, as you all know from now. On Resolution 2022-42, resolution introducing local law, whatever, of 2022, you use the phrase "respect to a variety of matters." That's caught us a few times in the past. So I understand you want to save space here, but for the public hearing and that notice, it would be really good if we explicitly said what those changes are, so the public has more understanding of what changes are being asked for in our zoning code.
Hang on,
Just
can you
make that
repeat
with-
that concern
Yeah.
again? I didn't quite hear what you said.
So you have that you want to make some changes to the zoning code.
Right,
The
you're-
re-
excuse me for a second, it's resolution 42.
42.
Okay,
Yep.
Correct.
sorry. With
No,
the-
that's okay, with the mask and everything. So with respect to a variety of matters. And I know that those are made explicit in the agenda for tonight, but I'm just saying that for the public hearing, when you have that public hearing notice, that all of those items should be made very explicit and not use the phrase with respect to a variety of matters, because that covers a world of sins. So let's make it very explicit and transparent to the public.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
I make a motion to close the public hearing. There's no other comments?
Second,
Okay, there's a motion and second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. We talked about, we'll defer to, Cosm coming back after, Jim and Tim have had a chance to calculate things. So the first item for discussions is...
Is he ready?
Are you ready? Okay. Yep, Jim?
So according to the map planning report that Berger Engineering submitted, dated December 16, 2021, last revised this January 20th, the design flow, the daily design flow is, according to the report, it's 32 gallons per day, but that actually is a mathematical error. One of the quantities, 450 gallons per day, was left off, so it's actually 3682.
Okay.
Is that correct, Tim?
I think maybe one of the inconsistencies is he cites a report, a previous report from Podgy, which probably had the 3232 in it, so he grabbed that number, but then when inventory, it was like Jim said, the
Okay.
450. So we just add 450 today to 3680.
3682, and then based on the town code, the buy-in fee is calculated for non-residential properties, is calculated at $10 per gallon of estimated daily design flow, so the buy-in fee would be $36,820.
Okay. Tim, do you agree with that? Just
On the
double
fly,
checking.
looking at this
Yeah,
over the past
understood.
10 minutes, yeah.
Again, it's subject
Yeah,
to,
so-
confirmation of the
Yeah, and
report.
when we do the actual final
Right.
agenda resolution, we can make sure. Brian, does that sound right? Brian James from COSM is sitting there, who I'm
So for
directing that
this one,
question to.
I'm just going to make a suggestion. I realize that the 14th is supposed to be workshop only, but I don't necessarily like doing these things on the fly like this, the calculations. I'd rather have our consultants have the opportunity to go back and do the homework,
Well, I
get the
think
real
what we're
numbers.
doing is scheduling a public hearing.
Okay.
We're not, passing a final resolution.
Well, I thought you were going to do a resolution tonight, and I'm like,
Well, we're doing a
It's a
resolution to
resolution to set
pass
the public
for the
hearing.
public
Okay,
hearing.
that's fine.
Setting the date, that's
Okay.
all.
okay.
Okay, but we will do, the math again, just to make sure.
yeah,
that
we need
when
to
we
do
get the
that,
final
make sure it's
resolution is-
correct.
Yeah, okay, so I understand Jim's doing an estimate and
Yeah.
Tim's doing an estimate. I just want to make sure we weren't going to try to pass this necessarily
No,
tonight. 'cause
I
know
just
you-
want to get the public hearing set.
Okay.
So we can do that. Jim, do you want to, say anything else or comments?
No, and I'll amend the resolution and send it to Joe.
Okay, what will be the date of the public hearing then?
What's the next,
14th, that's the workshop session.
okay, you want to?
So we can do it on the 24th?
The 24th,
Yeah. Okay, and that gives us time out to make. Yeah,
I'll make the change, I'll put those numbers in the
The right
resolution.
date, the 24th.
Okay. It's a resolution accepting the map plan and report,
right.
So the actual date would be the 28th, right?
28th.
If the 14th, and
Oh,
doing
it's-
2 weeks, it's the 28th, right?
Well, the 24th is the next board meeting. No, I'm sorry. 21st, 28th, you're
It'll be
right.
the
I'm
28th.
sorry, it's the 28th.
It's the 28th.
Yeah, yep, you're right.
I'll make a motion that we accept the map plan and report for the Chapel of the Sacred Mirrors with respect to the water extension and set the public hearing for Monday, February 24th.
28th.
28th, sorry.
Correction, Monday, February 28th, 2022.
Yep.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. Thanks, Jim and
Sure.
Tim, for doing those calculations. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Next item for starting a process, information, I'd like to call Attorney Neil Alexander up to talk about Alpine Commons and what is envisioned at a high level, I guess, for that project that we're going to be hearing about for the first time today, but I believe there was a packet of information. Go ahead, Neil.
Okay, yeah, I didn't bring my backpack.
Okay, good, yes.
Just
I don't want to have to call the
down
state
to a
police
book.
again, okay.
Down to a book. In any event, less jocularly, good to be with all of you. My name is Neil Alexander. I'm a partner at the law firm of Cuddy and Fainer. I'm here tonight on behalf of Diamond Properties relative to the Alpine Commons Shopping Center. Back to my left are both Ted Grogan and Ron Roth from Diamond Properties, who will come up momentarily just to tell you a little bit more. But Diamond Properties is too polite to tell you too much about their successes. So I just want to give you a little background about who they are a little bit. You may know them actually because they have another property in town. They took the old bowling alley a little while ago and they turned it into Spins Bowls. They have a history of unlocking value, whether it's the Orange County Choppers building over in Newburgh, the bowling alley in Poughkeepsie. I actually started working with them over 20 years ago when they called me up, the founder called me up and said, I bought a building in Mount Kisco from Carl Icahn. It has no roof, it's underwater, and the outlet from Sawmill River Parkway, Sawmill River rather, is underwater by about 5 feet. And with a lot of hard work, that building is a 600,000 square foot Grand Union distribution center that was in Mount Kisco. We turned it around. There's now a soccer field that was donated to the village of Mount Kisco when we were able to get the water back to where it needed to be as a result of Hurricane Irene. So there's a lot there. There's Grand Prix racings there. There's a rock and jump there. For a long time, it was the North American headquarters, I think, of wine enthusiasts. There's a big distribution center there. They have a big supermarket plant to go in there as well. Obviously, 600,000 square feet is a lot of property, but they're good at unlocking value. They bought this property, that was in distress from DLC a few years ago, and they've been working hard to try and unlock
For
value.
people who may not be familiar,
I'll go back to
this
it,
is
yeah.
where BJ's is, that whole big complex that we call Alpine Commons has a big sign, entrance right off of Route 9. So BJ's is, right now, the only occupied, building, correct?
Yes, they didn't expect that as soon as they bought it a few years ago that the AC Moore and the Salvation Army would go out. So there's 86 acres up there with a great signalized access point at the traffic light there, right on Route 9. The infrastructure is all sitting there, water, sewer, and so forth. And so they have a vision for it. They wrote you a letter about it because they've been running into some real significant challenges with the way your code is written right now. Nothing wrong with the code. It's just, I think, relative to repositioning this asset in the 21st century, that they've just, that tenant base is just not here.
And what you're referring to is because of the demise of shopping centers, and the use of internet, work from home, it's changed the whole dynamics of how a property of this needs to work.
And the last mile aspect of people ordering things right on time as opposed to big box retail. And so the notion here, and Ted will come up in a couple of seconds and tell you a little bit more about what they've been trying to lease for and who's been interested, because they have a lot of interest in the site. It just isn't in complete alignment with your code. But the vision, really, which you'll see as we go through a short presentation, if we can indulge you all for some time, is to create a little hamlet up there. And it's 86 acres, parcel it out, intellectually, but keep the development in the center of where it's already been development to a large extent. And therefore, we have huge buffers around it, setbacks, but take advantage of what's there. Right now there's over 100,000 square feet that's empty, and we'd like to repurpose it, and we'd like to be part of the solution to the problem that we've encountered that was much worse than we expected. So we really are excited about you putting us on the agenda right away. And with that, I'm going to have Ted come up just for a couple minutes, if you would, and identify yourself and just tell you a little bit about what he's been encountering as a VP of leasing.
And just if I could say to the town board, I have had contact with these individuals, and when he says, put it on the board quickly, I said, why don't we bring this to the town board as a concept? I think it would be fair for the town board to hear this presentation now, so that we can discuss it further and see if this is something that we believe will be consistent with this particular area.
Hi, I'm Ted Grogan. I'm Vice President of Leasing with Diamond Properties, and thank you for sharing your time with us tonight. It's an awesome asset. I mean, Alpine Commons, I've known it for years prior to even our company acquiring it with my ex-wife growing up in the area. And so it's just, I know the area, I know the asset, I love the land. It has been a grind for me. Like personally, it's tough to come up here and say, you know, this wonderful 86-acre parcel with amazing traffic count and a lit intersection with just, you know, the vibrance of this town that I've seen transpire over 20 years has been miraculous. Also, what's been miraculous is the transformation in big box retail. And I've been banging my head against a wall trying to get retailers to go in. AC Moore went out of business. That is what it is. Salvation Army approached us. They're right in the middle of the vacant building, and they asked for a buyout. And, you know, they paid some income, and it was a tough decision, but ultimately the vision that our CEO had when he bought that property is BJ's is awesome. You know, it's a fantastic site. Couple challenges, and you know, on the topography aspect, it's high. You know, you don't have visibility of the retail, and also you've got the big box, you know, challenge. So when we first closed on the property, I went up there. I'm like, there's a ton of land. It would be great to really get some traffic up here and make a village within the village with all of this acreage. I mean, you've got 86 acres, 25 of which is improved land, and the rest of it is wetlands. And you know, it's neat coming in here and then seeing, you know, the hometown heroes. You know, one of the things that you might have noticed on our plan is that we've discussed and is very near and dear to our CEO is putting in some tiny homes for veterans. So we were
And near to me and us, you know, for our veterans.
awesome. And we have been exploring that in other assets that we have up and down the East Coast. But I'm here simply to just ask for your help. We would love to get some traffic and make it a true live, work, play environment up there. And I think the driver of that is residential. And to get residential up there is exciting for a lot of prospective retailers. I know the BJ's, we've been in discussions with BJ's, and they would love to have that. They've seen that type of repurposing of big box retail elsewhere where they're tenants, and they've only benefited from it. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have, or simply let our partner, Dakota Partners, who we've worked with prior to a property we have in Hartford and have a fantastic relationship with. And, you know, they are the kind of developer that is rare, where they do what they say and they say what they do. And we admire that and respect that. So
I think for purpose of the public, you know, the board has received documents, but the public, you know, isn't necessarily aware. So when you talk about residential, Ted, would you just describe what you envision, because that runs a whole gamut of big spectrum.
It's a young person's workforce type of housing that's going to go up there in about 100, I think it's
144.
144 units, thank you. And I know their product. You can go to their website, Dakota Partners in Massachusetts. I think that speaks volumes on their website of the kind of product they build. And I used to work with them prior to Diamond Properties as a commercial real estate broker. I know firsthand what they've done in the tri-state area is first-class product, and they look to emulate the type of architecture that's already in this area.
So what kind of things are you looking to put out there? Like, I'm looking at your map here.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Do you want to?
Only because
do we have a thumb drive?
Yeah, why don't we have them put it up on the screen so that the TV
So
can
the
see it?
audience can see it too.
Yes, that was the
We weren't
idea.
trying to, we just didn't-
No, no,
Yeah.
That's fine, it's
I'm
easier.
the leasing guy.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I called them up and I said, guys, we need your help, and we need your help.
We have a lot of fans at home watching right now that are gonna want to
good.
see.
Thank you.
You'd be amazed the number of people that watch the town government channel.
No problem.
Because it,
So I'll play MC for another minute or so, but then also, as Ted had alluded to, Brian Donato from Dakota Partners is here. They're, you know, he is more than willing to talk to you
Sure.
tonight, or if you need to move forward with your agenda, we'll.
No,
we'll
I
keep
mean, we
moving
have
ahead.
allowed it some time, so
So
we
if you could just
welcome.
actually, I'm sorry, just out, just a little bit out? Perfect. So what you notice in lot one, if you look at the orange and the pink, lot two and one where they meet, that's where that you can see right where the pink and the orange meet together, that's where the sort of boulevard entrance style from the traffic light in Route 9, just to orient the people who are at home who are watching. That's where it comes into the site today. In the big 100,000 square foot building that used to be AC Moore and Salvation Army is on lot 2. That's obviously a huge focus of the repositioning. Ted didn't quite get there, but we pivoted a little bit, but you know, they've had some challenges relative to getting the right type of tenant to come into that retail building. So it's part of what we're asking, and then I'll pivot back to the residential in a second. Part of what we are asking is sort of for a loosening of some of the special permit and site plan type of uses that are allowed in the SC zone. As you know, we're only one of 2 properties in the entire town that's actually in this zoning district. So I think that affords the ability to think globally, but also not have the application open up to other zones, the ability to. So some of the things that you'll know also is, if you know, I'm down in Peekskill, La Factoria was another project that Diamond were able to do, and what they were able to blend was hospitality as well as food service, so restaurants, entertainment, a climbing rope overlooking the Hudson, with a restaurant, with also mixing in some you know, modern 21st century manufacturing is a very different thing, whether it's brewing and distilling, and there are a lot of other options. So when you think of what's industrial, we'd like you to think maybe in a different way, that industrial manufacturing is not necessarily what manufacturing used to be. 3D printing is manufacturing,
Right.
if you really think about it, right? So some clarity on that in your code and some loosening for us would be really helpful. Also some other personal services, and we made a markup to you, whether it's in the animal care, that's obviously a very high growth industry. As we all know, the shelters were emptied out at the beginning of COVID, and now people who haven't necessarily been pet owners are all of a sudden saying, where's my nearest vet? Where's my 24-hour clinic? And are in desperate need of that. So those are some of the things we sort of have recommended and would need to encourage. As you know, those buildings are long and deep, so figuring out exactly how they're going to load or reconfigure is part of the challenge. But that's sort of one piece of the puzzle. Obviously, the blue lot 3 is the BJ's. 4 and 6, you know, tourism in Dutchess County is a growth industry. It's something that's being really pushed for, while, you know, different parts of the county have different assets and aspects, and I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, post-COVID, obviously business travel, but also family travel. You know, whether it's, you know, if you look at the Route 9 corridor all the way over to, jumping over to Orange County, whether it's Legoland or water parks or what's going on with historic Hudson Valley up and down 9 going north, you know, a hotel is a possibility that, you know, needs to be considered and could have fit into, you know.
So that would be number 6?
Probably 6, not with its own access. Again, the whole point here, just so we're clear, is saving emergency access in a Knox box. The goal here is to, like Ted said, is to create a hamlet and a hamlet served solely by the existing point. And that traffic volumes would essentially, you think about what the retail traffic volumes are historically for big box, you're now creating this mix. You got a lot of offsets as to when people are moving, and they're very different. So we would predict, and we've talked to our traffic engineers, that we could keep, even with a full build out here, very similar traffic flows. Certainly for the Route 9 corridor, not needing improvements. Whether there's some internal stacking we have to think through as we go forward, when we get to, God willing, you all see fit to help us with work through some zoning textbook when we get to a site plan level. Yeah, there may be some internal queuing issues we have to work out, but that's on our success, right? It doesn't affect the 9 corridor and people's greater experience. That just is our own jeopardy. So then you get to the heart of 5, which is what Dakota's looking at, which would hopefully be multifamily. There's a lot of infrastructure that has to be extended that's on site, but it has to be extended and brought out here. So in playing with their rough math, that's how they came to that, I think it was 144, 145 number as a preliminary number to start working with what fits, but also what relative to water, sewer, stormwater, and which, while much of that infrastructure exists on site, it needs to be extended out to that portion of the site.
Is there any talk about veterans housing, anything like that that you're talking about? Putting
I'm
in
sorry,
there?
would you say that again? I apologize.
Veterans housing?
Yeah, that's where,
I'm wrapping around to one, to
Okay,
back to
all right,
lot
I'll
one.
wait.
But thank you, that was perfect. You hit exactly where I wanted to go next. You know what, actually, if you would be nice enough to go in on one a little bit, and you can come down, yeah.
come down, yeah.
Okay, so what you can see very faintly, I'm sorry to those at home, is you can see some blue lines to go to the left towards the front. So there are some wetlands in there. Right now, those wetlands are not protected, they're just regulated wetlands. And so part of what we were thinking about doing was doing something that could protect those wetlands, because that would be helpful to everybody. So we would be willing to entertain a notion of some kind of deed restriction or restrictive covenant to protect them, so as instead of having them be regulated for future development. The tiny houses are shown in that circular. I think it's 21 or 22. That's something.
Right.
Again, this is to start the conversation, and we're excited to start the conversation. We know that Malcolm and Jim and Tim, big input, relative to existing infrastructure, relative to, we're not the only property in the SC zone. So that's kind of what we're starting with. We did a very rough markup, which was submitted to you to get the conversation started. Obviously, what we're looking to do is amendments to the zoning text. For the SC zone, we kind of started playing with some ideas, which we shared with you, which are all in line with the way you treat FAR and density elsewhere in the community. And I think I probably got more in the weeds than any of you wanted to tonight on the first one, so I apologize. If you'd like to hear from Brian, he's
Sure,
here.
yeah.
He'd love to tell you a little bit more
Brian?
about Dakota and what they're able to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Brian Donato. I'm a Vice President of Acquisitions Development for Dakota Partner. So Dakota Partners is an experienced multifamily developer based out of Waltham, which is just west of Boston. We do work in the New England area and throughout Mid-Atlantic. I'm actually based in Ithaca, New York, and we have a team in New York. This would be our first project in New York, but it's an area where we have invested human resources to grow into. As Neil mentioned, our idea here is to build approximately 140 multifamily apartments, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. This is, we think it's a great site for all the reasons that Neil mentioned. I think it lends itself really well to multifamily. It's got a lot of access to local amenities while still being, it's going to be sort of tucked on the hill, so there's a certain level of privacy that'll be afforded there. We're really in the preliminary stages of this, but I would encourage you to take a look at our website and get a sense of the things that we build. architecturally, I think it'll look really good. And, you know, I think we're hopeful that our portion of the project can be a catalyst to help grow the remainder of the site. Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bill?
So, this project, for me, is an opportunity for this town. Anyone that is familiar with the dilemma involving shopping center and strip malls occurring right now, even in Dutchess County, and post-COVID, it could get even worse. You're seeing these types of establishments become empty. And one of the concerns that residents have shared with us previously is, you know, you have all these new projects coming into the town, what about the buildings that are vacant, right? Well, we have 100,000 square feet vacant, which I actually do sometimes lose sleep over, because if BJ's leaves, we're gonna have a real problem.
That's right.
We just went through a situation, I think it was involving a tax cert
Yep.
couple years ago, maybe on this property.
Well, just a year ago.
A year ago, and we saw what type of detrimental impact we could have in this town if we lose this rateable, right? Not only the town, the fire district,
Yep.
okay? The fire district will feel this more than anything, because it's a small taxable district. So that said, any opportunity that comes forth that we believe as a town board is worth exploring and moving forward, my position was, let's get this in front of the full board as soon as possible, and in a public meeting so that folks can see what opportunities may exist. The bottom line, in my opinion, is we need to think outside the box with shopping centers. If there is a non-traditional approach that incorporates some level of village square, town square type of scenario where you have residential housing incorporated into the property, I think that's worth exploring. If you look at what they're doing on the site of the old Hudson River Psych Center, they're doing the same thing, right? They got the shop right up there, they got a number of standalones, and the next phase, or one of the phases, is gonna be residential component, right?
Well, you look what's happening in Eastgate, you know.
Eastdale Village is
Eastdale,
another
I
one.
mean, Eastdale.
Eastdale Village with the
Yep.
boutique shops and the residential, they created basically a village on
That's it.
60 acres. This is 84 acres, I understand it's not all buildable, but this is an opportunity, in my opinion, that we need to explore. Restaurants, breweries, things like that, there's a number of uses that may not be in our shopping center zone that we need to take a look at, whether it be through text amendment or whether it be through revising zoning. The other shopping center zone, I think, is Hannaford, is that correct? Yeah, so the only two shopping centers, parcels in our town are the Wappinger Plaza, which is Hannaford, Goodwill, and this one. So,
There's a landlocked lot behind Hannaford that's also zoned.
yeah, so there's a landlocked lot behind Hannaford also. But again, if you look at Hannaford, Wappinger Plaza, what sits right behind it, right? You got Riverbend, which is in the village, but you have a complement adjacent to a commercial shopping center, right? Which can feed those particular establishments. Let's face it, Hannaford now stands alone. Stop and Shop is gone. I believe there was a dark lease element at one point there, which kept it vacant. If we have an opportunity to move forward and we need to make some adjustments to facilitate filling those buildings and creating a complement for residential housing on the property, I'm all for that. That's my position. I remember when this project first came to town in the early 90s, and I remember having reservations about the planning process because it wasn't visible from Route 9. I remember having this discussion, and the planning board's position back then was, we want to tuck things away in this town. We don't want frontage. That's bad. Well, here we are all these years later, and we've heard from Ron Hicks, the Deputy County Executive for Economic Development. He said, the biggest challenge with that property is you can't see it, right? So here we have folks that are interested in exploring that property by balancing it better with the housing element,
Right.
so that it's going to be basically self-supported in a way.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to explore the village within a village
I think that is key. I know some folks that are watching this right now are going to have concerns about, years ago, there was discussion about having an entrance to this plaza off of Old Hopewell Road. And my understanding is that property still exists, but talking to these folks, that would only be emergency access. We already have a signal-controlled intersection in front of Alpine Commons that is, built out already, right? And speaking to these gentlemen, that was my concern, because I have residents that live adjacent to this property. We all have concerns about Old Hopewell Road stacking, as already stacks way up, right? So these individuals had said, that'll be emergency access. Why would we even explore access onto Old Hopewell when we have 4 lanes in and out on Route 9, right? So I think that is key. The hotel phase, that's gonna be something additional. I can tell you that when we did the comprehensive plan in 2010, we did look at where can we have hotel inventory on Route 9. At that time, this is going back 12 years ago now, at that time, we looked at the property behind Chase Bank, okay, which is too wet for that type of a project. Number 6 could be a phase potentially that could have a hotel. And the gentleman said it would exit into the perimeter road. It wouldn't even go directly out to Route 9. So again, I see value in exploring this further. I think that we as a town board need to discuss with our Director of Strategic Planning what actions we should take to address this. I know we have one of our planners here as well, Malcolm, and I'd like to hear, perhaps, since he's here, if the board doesn't have an objection, I'd like to hear maybe some thoughts from Malcolm on this as a planner.
Sure.
we have to, yeah.
Go ahead,
Does that
Malcolm.
sound
Please. Yes.
So, first and foremost, I think that the shopping center district, the way that it is written out, is a little antiquated, and it's automobile-centric. It's not very conducive to, any kind of pedestrian, any kind of regular activity that isn't dependent on a car. And so I think that bringing residences into this site makes a lot of sense, both from a livability standpoint and from an economic standpoint, from a billable standpoint. So I think the idea has a lot of merit. My understanding is that this site plan or this conceptual design is very preliminary, and there's a lot we want to look at. It's also being proposed by the applicant, and so this is what they want. And I think we need to take a look at this. We need to take a look at the other shopping center district, and we need to have a hard think about what the town wants and what's best for the town. But I think that there is a considerable overlap between what the applicant is looking to do here and what is in the best interest of the town.
Yeah, let me just say this, lastly, and I've said this before a number of projects that have occurred in our town. We've looked at the traffic in our town. We've seen, 40,000 cars a day in certain areas on Route 9, right? And the question remains, do we want people driving through our town, or do we want people driving to our town? That's the conversation we had before Adams came in. That's the conversation we had before Alto Music became a reality, and a number of other destinations. I think this might be worth exploring to potentially create another destination.
Right.
Thank you.
And I think that's what's been part of our discussion with Diamond and Dakota, is how we do that, including, as they've mentioned, looking at a number of different potential tenants for that 100,000 square feet that would certainly add to that. But I think back to your point, Bill, what's also driven this is we want to make sure we keep BJ's there, first and foremost, because if we lose this site, then all those ratables that we negotiated actually downwards will go away.
The other thing I would add is that I think it makes a lot of sense to pursue development like this in areas of the town that have already been developed, where we already have the infrastructure, where additional traffic would be feeding onto Route 9 and not roads that are less able to handle that kind of traffic. So I think that taking another look at the shopping center district is something that we should take very seriously. Yeah.
Now, Chris, Angela?
No, I like the look of the projects, and like Malcolm said, we just have to examine what the town needs and what will benefit the town. I
also
like
like-
the project.
I like the project too. I also like the idea of redeveloping the property. We do have a lot of vacant properties, and if we can revitalize this to make it something that people will go to, I think this is a great project going
I
forward,
think,
so.
on Route 9, we have basically three challenges. Two we've discussed, including Hannaford, making sure that stays there. Then the other is the old plant depot, 7 acres in that area, and what we're going to do with it. That also benefits our residents as well, like with sewer, water, and various other infrastructure we'll talk about. Jim, what is the next steps? What do you recommend the board do going forward to consider this and to keep it moving along so we don't lose opportunities, but make sure we have the right discussion?
Well, I think the next step would be firming up what would be the changes to the local law that would be needed. We could begin looking at the seeker process with relation to that. This is actually fairly straightforward in that, as Malcolm noted, it's all built out. So the number of outside approvals that are required, other than DEC, I don't think there's a whole lot of changes that are necessary. I believe we have to also bring this property into the water district.
They're in the sewer already,
but
so
not
it
the
would be
water.
the water. So I would, recommend that you and Mr. Alexander, certainly work on the precise scope and wording of text amendment. Then, as I understand the process, but correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, is that we would review that, 1 or 2 meetings. We would then have a public meeting, hearing to look at that. Then, assuming we were in agreement and pass that, then we would, submit it to the planning board, right?
Right.
Is that part of the process with them, and the seeker and those elements would be addressed by the planning board. Is that correct?
For the most part.
Roughly,
yeah.
I mean, high level summary.
So, and one of the things too, that both Malcolm and Mr. Alexander had noted is that, some, particularly with respect to current industrial uses, our code more or less looks at industrial uses as being smokestack uses, which, is not really what we see currently. And I think one of the things also that we should look at as part of this process, which would broaden out maybe into some of the other districts, not as part of this, but I think just conceptually, is a definition of a light industrial
Right, I
type
agree.
use that has minimal external impacts. Assembly, 3D printing,
Right.
things like that. Our code is, is really not up to date with respect to that. Right now, the only area where we permit any kind of industrial uses is along Airport Drive.
So we would first, though, tackle this within the SC
Correct.
district.
Yep.
And then set a framework for that. Because
Right,
we do have over at Hannaford's vacant, property, COVID has hit some of those, storefronts, including the buffet and so forth, quite hard. So we do
Yeah, I
have a
mean,
challenge.
Hannaford's being more of a strip type mall.
Correct, yeah.
A little bit different, but, some of the spaces here are much larger, which would,
Correct.
lend themselves to,
Light
some
and
sort
modern
of,
industrial.
a light industrial, use or something like that, so.
Including, I think, we had this discussion, possibility of rooftop, whether or not it's rooftop, from energy or even garden or there's a lot of different things that we can use, including new approaches to warehousing, but has, proactive. So I agree with you, Jim. I think looking at the code, we need to make some changes in the text amendment
And I
content.
think, again, so that the applicant can move promptly, I think we look at these issues here.
Right.
And then after we work them out here, maybe we can expand them to other areas.
But right now, we're just focused. This would
Yeah.
not, what we're talking about for our residents doesn't apply elsewhere
Correct.
within the town, with the exception of the other SC district, that
Right.
we're talking about.
What I would suggest, as we're looking at this, throughout the process, there will be public hearings, there will be opportunity for the public to contribute, but I think that as we're looking at changes of use to the code, I think it would behoove us to look at either a public input session or public comment period, because some of the best ideas when it comes to those uses will come from members of the community.
Right, it's going to be based on their needs and what their wants.
Exactly. So
So-
their concerns and their suggestions, I think, would contribute
Exactly.
greatly to this process as we're looking at revising the SC zone.
Okay, so I'd say, Mr. Haran, you and Mr. Alexander first, take your pen to paper and take a look at it, and then,
Malcolm's gonna be involved.
yes, well, of course, get back to
Sure.
us, and I'm sure probably Tim and CPL, because there's some of the infrastructure
Yep.
issues. So we can then have another meeting like this to review it, to see what the feeling of the board is on that next step.
Okay.
Okay? So, I mean, I'd,
I like the hotel.
like to see, sometime in the March
We need that here.
context, if you guys can work that,
Yeah.
so that we can be discussing it at one of our March meetings,
Okay.
okay? Does that sound good to everyone on the board?
Very good.
Yep, it's
I
fine.
agree.
Okay,
Very good, thank you.
thank you, and I appreciate, really, Dakota, I think for your vision from this point of view, and I think for Ted and team, with respect to the rest of the development, do appreciate your discussions, with us tonight, so thanks very much, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item that we had is to designate the February 14th board meeting as a workshop meeting, as we've discussed several times. I think we have some general topics that we already discussed, but I'd say during the next week, the board members can get into me, proposed topics you'd like to specifically see on that, and then we'll finalize that agenda, and also, as Councilman Beal said, we'll make sure that there is opportunity for residents, certainly at that meeting, to comment. Okay? Any other comments, though, with respect to that? So can I have a motion to designate the,
Make a second.
Okay.
Second.
motion second, all in favor? Aye. Nays or abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. Kevin Hawthorne, would you come and present on the veterans' activities that you have at this point in time? And, it will be, later on, we have a resolution, but in the course of all this, we discovered actually the board has never officially approved the Veterans Advisory Group. We've had, Kevin there and the other members, and also there wasn't a charter. So I asked Kevin to go do some work as far as the charter. I think it would be preliminary just to take a look at it, but we'll come back and officially approve it, although we do have a resolution later to officially establish the group, subject to getting the charter done later, and also to appoint Kevin. But Kevin, why don't you just talk about the projects that you've been working on? And also, thank you very much for, as you brought these banners down, our hometown heroes, really quite a significant accomplishment, I think, in the town. And also now we have this process which is ongoing. You can talk more about it, whereby we're preserving or extending the life of the banners rather than keeping them out in the winter cold and wind. So Kevin, the floor is yours.
Okay. With respect to the Hometown Heroes banners in the town hall, there are 75 that will be displayed. We have 65 that have been outdoors. I've got another 10 or 15 coming in. And it's because of the Christmas holidays, which we could not use the walls for the banners, it's about 2.5 months of display time. So I'm figuring about 2 weeks per group of banners, per 14. And then all the other banners are in the emergency services building in storage there. And I'm going to work with the buildings and grounds folks to make sure that all of the banners are displayed. We have a couple here right now which are double-sided. The one closest to the door with myself in the grainy picture there, on the back side is Philip Dew. Over here, an elderly gentleman, Cantarella, on the back side is him when he was in his 20s. So those will be turned around and additional ones will be brought in until early April, or when winter lets us go. I'm hoping it's about the first or second week of April we start putting the banners back up.
Which one is you?
The one with the beard.
That scruffy-looking guy back there?
First or second one
Oh,
in,
okay.
yeah.
See, now you threw them off.
The pyramids at Giza, are there 3 or 4?
No comment.
There are 3, okay. Yeah, well, you know, a little history here. The chief of naval operations said that sailors could grow beards.
Right.
And I took full advantage of that. As a matter
Clearly.
of fact, while I was in training, you're not allowed to have any facial hair. But I took advantage of it, and I submitted a request chit, which is 4 copies. Well, 3 copies got nullified. I got a hold of the 1 copy that was not checked off. I grew a mustache and a beard.
You
during
certainly
training.
did.
And I
And you
swabbed
proudly
decks.
display that in our town.
I swabbed decks for about 3 weeks. I am currently in the Disabled American Veterans, and I work at Castle Point Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Now, the main reason I'm mentioning that is so that the word gets out to our veteran community, as well as the families of the veterans, because a lot of veterans coming back from Vietnam and Iraq, Afghanistan, they feel as though they really don't have the right to complain that they got injured or that they have PTS or TBI. And I want to get the word out, and so does the VA, actually. They want to get the word out that people have to come in and file claims because they signed on the dotted line, they signed their lives away. If they got injured in any way at all, and it can be tied back to the service time, they should file claims, and the VA has more than enough money to help people out.
So
and
you've
we're-
been holding a session or 2 here in
Right,
Town
right.
Hall? and-
Every month, we're going to be doing
Right.
that again.
Yeah. And, you know, keep in mind, you know, Angela, you know, Councilwoman Bettina, because I don't know if you're still providing work, but with your
I
other
am,
thing.
but
so,
with COVID,
yeah,
things have come
COVID's-
to a,
Yeah, but certainly involve her, you know,
and in
as well.
fact, I
with
want to be
Castle
on
Point.
your, you know,
Okay.
I think it's advantageous for
Yeah.
each board member to be part of whatever committees we.
Oh, I agree, and that's,
So I would like,
absolutely.
I am doing this for the veterans because it is close to my heart with my family background and the people that I have lost to the different wars.
Right, well, with
So-
the supervisor's assistance, we're going to be developing the Community Affairs, Veterans Affairs unit, and there will be a lot of different subcommittees and action areas that I would like all of you to get involved in. And Al, indeed, will be involved in our
Excuse me.
5K. To go on, I've spoken to Barbara as well as Howie about a fire pit at Schlatt House. And there are no real set-in-stone code restrictions on that fire pit.
and this is with respect to the flag burning,
Correct,
which we have the
correct.
flag, you know,
Right.
collection box.
Yeah, I forgot to include that in this. It's got to do with Flag Day, which is the day where we retire American flags. Now, very popular American flags are, they're polyester, they're a combination of cotton and polyester. Well, those really can't be burned safely because they give off toxic smoke and toxic fumes. So what I plan is that just the cotton flags will be burned on June 14th, which is Flag Day. Last year, it didn't work out, so it was actually the 4th of July, which is not really the correct holiday to do that. So I plan on advertising that and inviting residents to bring their flags. Now, the combination flags, the combination material, will go up to the Resource Recovery Agency where they are burned with filtration.
And I think it's important that the residents also know that they can still bring their flags here to
Right.
Town
Yes.
Hall
Oh,
if they're
yes.
cotton,
Right.
not cotton, whatever, for
Yeah.
proper disposal. It's not just limited to cotton flags.
Right, well,
But I
the-
agree with you, I think it's prudent that we do.
Yeah, so you have the
Right.
drop-off box
Just-
here right outside Town Hall.
Right, yeah, the drop-off boxes, it fills up after the period of about two months.
Yeah, but I've heard nothing but positive things about that from a lot of people.
Yeah, getting a lot of great reviews.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So what Kevin's proposing is that we build a permanent fire pit.
Right.
You know, that meets the code and, you know, approval of the fire department, instead of the makeshift one that we had last year.
Now, to make that easier, I feel that a Boy Scout going for the Eagle Scout status could adopt that for his Eagle Scout project. And if anybody has any ins with the Boy Scouts, kindly
Bill does.
advertise the fact that.
Bill
we would
does.
like-
There he is.
I'm not looking at anybody in particular.
I just
however.
got an email from an Eagle Scout candidate as we speak here. But I think he may have a project picked out already, but I know that there are candidates out there looking for ideas.
Very good, very good. The commemorative bricks at Schlatt House, I am working with the original brick family, the Eagle Scout that put that up in 2012. Been working with the family. I'm working on getting plans that they used, not so that the Eagle Scout to-be, who's going to do the other side, not so that he has a leg up, just so that I have an idea what the proper way of doing it is. And I've worked with Steve on the right type of bricks, Cambridge bricks, as well as the right layers of material. It just has to be the right thicknesses. Now that what we have now that's 10 years old has lasted really, really well because of the correct layers. I'm scheduled to meet with Adam Roche this week. I believe it's Thursday. I'm going up to Poughkeepsie and talk to him about the Dutchess County Military Museum. He said that he had spoken with
Right.
Joey about that, and the
May.
supervisor is very interested in that. So is Adam.
Oh, good.
Now, I'm also reaching out to Adam because he's got tentacles all over the county, all over several counties.
By the way, he is a resident of the town.
Right, exactly. And he's a frequent visitor to Wreaths Across America as well. Memorial Day of this year. I would like to take the portfolio that Joey put together with the town residents and speak the names of the veterans buried in our local cemeteries. I don't have an awful lot of information on a lot of them, but the ones that we do have information on will pique the interest of the residents.
Do we know how many we have, Joey? How many names?
I was just gonna say, we have a lot.
Okay.
And if there are
I mean, a
any
lot.
over in your neck of the woods, I'd appreciate.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there
Okay.
I mean,
Good, because I don't,
there's a lot of people.
out in front of the building is planned Hero Square or some such name that we talked about last year. And we want to carry that forward. We want to not concentrate, but keep it in mind.
Well, we want a home for this guy.
Exactly, a home for our saluting soldier.
This is a good thing for residents to give their input on what they would like to name it. It would be
Yep.
important, it would be their participation would be
Exactly.
very key.
Right.
So, that's
So
a
maybe we
good
could put
idea.
something in the town
Well, I
website.
think, and Bill, I think this goes along with what we've talked about before, is landscaping plan that connects, the ESB, with the front of Town Hall, which we can discuss during our workshop.
Did we ever have any success with insurance money on that stone wall
On
that
the
got
wall,
run over?
yeah.
Steve?
No?
The wall?
I mean, the person crashed into the front of the state police barracks, but they didn't, they drove away. Apparently, the car drove away.
And they don't have a
No.
report.
They got away,
They got away, but they didn't drive away.
so I don't know how that,
There's a car laying there for them to be able to drive.
I don't know how it happened, but if,
Right in front of the ESB.
Jim, if there's a way for us to perhaps explore an insurance claim on that, it was damaged
have
by
a
a vehicle.
license?
We have photos to get that wall repaired.
What was the date?
I don't have it offhand, but it
I
was,
swear to God, you
it was a
can't
couple
make
months
this
ago.
up.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it was probably around September, now that I think about it.
Well, I think it was, we noticed it, didn't we, around Veterans Day or something?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Actually, we
That's
noticed-
what it was.
We came for Veterans Day.
File here,
Yeah.
determine when it happened, and
I know, I took pictures as well.
I mean, do we have
Still
any,
have it.
do we have
Do we have any cameras or anything, even at the state troopers?
No, but
No
the damage,
cameras?
we have pictures.
Yeah. Anyway, my thought was, and not to go off track here, just give me 5 seconds. We explored resetting that stone wall, and it was very expensive. And then somebody crashed into it, and I said, oh, good, maybe we can get, maybe
They
we
get a
can
reset. Yeah.
maybe we can get it fixed now. So we'll talk more about that later, but Jim, I'll get you offline on that. Back to you,
All
sorry.
right, one last thing is the 5K. We have selected Holy Saturday as the best day to do that. And Holy Saturday is, it should not detract from the people who need to get out and run. We're going to use the same donation structure that we had before, and if I had remembered, Jessica sent me what we used last year. I would have printed it out and been able to talk about it, but I can't. But we will be soliciting more donations, as well as getting the signs ready. And we're planning on, I believe, we're planning on a canvas bag again
Okay.
with all of the icons on it, all of the signs and icons. So that ought to be really exciting. We're going to get going much earlier this year than we did last year, so it's...
So for our residents, this is the Joe Ennisser now is an annual event, the second year, Joe Ennisser Memorial 5K Run Walk, and this is out at the rail trail.
Yes.
Same place again on April the 16th. So mark your calendars and you'll be getting more information as Kevin moves it along, right, sir?
Very good. Now, with respect to the charter, I'd like everybody to take a look at the charter that the supervisor pulled out and I altered. What I did in blue, I have an awful lot of questions about that since this came from the state of Maine. So I really,
So this is just really a preliminary for
Exactly.
us to think about what we want to have. So it's going to be a work in progress. To add, I think, Angela, we get other, involvement, other inputs, I think, from us or some other veterans, but we need to have a charter, so that's why I
So just
asked.
that I'm clear, overseeing York's annual,
Yeah, no.
is that York, Maine?
yes, it is.
That's
Okay.
where we took this
I've been
one
there
from.
quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I put it in blue.
It's a lovely
That's why I put it in
place.
blue.
It really is. Very nice.
Yeah, I don't understand the freedom of access law. I don't know if we have one, or I know there's a FOIL, but this has got to be fleshed out. And that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Much appreciated.
Sorry.
Steve, you want to come up and talk about your trucks?
During the budget discussions, I had mentioned that 2 of our vehicles have required repairs, extensive repairs that I, thought amounted to more than the vehicle's worth, and I would like to replace them. I had included that in the equipment line of my budget, but it was suggested that that should be addressed at a later date. Here we are. At the last meeting, I had discussed this as well. And at one of the previous meetings, someone had asked whether or not the highway mechanics might be able to repair these. The information that I had given you all about their condition previously had come from the highway mechanic. He put that into an email here and went into further detail on what the issues are with these trucks. They're 2009 Chevy Colorado pickups. They're very light-duty pickup trucks, and they're very inexpensive. And as you can see here, they were manufactured with an engine defect that keeps coming back to haunt us. I would like to replace one, which has been used here by the custodian, with a small minivan almost identical to what the animal control officer uses, because he does quite a bit of courier work for town hall here, and that would be a better suited vehicle for him. The second one I would like to replace with a full-size pickup that would do any job that we would need it to do and hold up much better in that work than this Colorado has. I would estimate both vehicles to come in within a cost of $75,000. The market right now on vehicles is kind of unstable, but what I would like to do is bring you hard pricing at one of the February meetings and get a decision then whether to move forward. I would have to put the order in by March to get the trucks ordered on this model year.
These are on state bid?
Yes, they would go, that's where, between now and one of the future meetings, I would enter it into the OGS system and get hard quotes for you.
Yeah, I have no objection.
So I guess what we need is to bring the specs in naturally for the trucks, what the cost of the truck would be, and then don't we get some kind of trade-in value too as well? Typically, you've done pretty well in the past on that.
We don't typically do trade-in, we sell the
Sell it
equipment
out.
as surplus.
Yep.
This past sale that we had, I
Did
had
very well.
estimated about $2,500 on
Yeah.
that pickup. We got $9,200 for it. I don't know, the used truck market right now is kind of crazy.
It's booming.
Yeah.
It's really booming.
I'm estimating, conservatively estimating, that these trucks will go for about $2,500 apiece. They may come in at more, maybe a little less, but, and, the book value on them, KBB book value on them in decent condition is around $5,000.
Okay.
So with
So-
the problems that we have with them, I would expect them to bring a total of $5,000 for the two.
Yeah, so if we assume 75K right now, again, your estimate 5,000 for resale value, whatever you do. So roughly about 70K is what we're looking at. But again, we'll wait for your estimates to come in. I'm sure
Yeah.
you'll go out there, get the specs and get us
Right.
to us on.
And then I would need you folks to authorize
Sure.
the funds for it.
Okay, I think.
The only thing I would say is make sure that once you get those specs, that you can actually get the vehicle. I'm having
Yeah.
nothing
Well,
but
I can't
problems.
do that until
Yeah.
you authorize me to order. That's why I want to make sure that we get them in as soon as possible.
I can just tell you from the county perspective, I mean, it is like the worst time to get any
Yeah.
vehicles.
I
Can't
have
get
a
them.
feeling that van is going to be fairly easy to come by.
Okay.
The pickup trucks are what are really
Yes.
taking a hit right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, the van should be
Yeah,
a problem.
so I have no problem with you moving forward to get more
Okay.
information.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very
Thanks,
much,
Steve.
Steve, appreciate it. The next item we have, it's really more informational, I don't have it as a proposed resolution, but I had redrafted and, provided to you here a copy of what I call the Community Affairs Advisory Council Charter. You'll recall we did have a Recreation Committee, and that went defunct when members either left, retired, or resigned. So I think we need to have some sort of committee, and this is a framework for that, as I proposed in the past, that will address community involvement and volunteerism. And this is designed to do that, and I have defined in here for your review, and hopefully then in a February meeting, in the February second meeting, we can discuss this further. So I leave it for you to review it, but if you have any questions right now based on having taken a look, and I'm sure more than happy to discuss it. So, since there is none, then we can talk more about this going out into the future. So thank you, for consideration on that.
Got it.
Okay, next item is resolutions. So we have first Resolution 2022-42, and this is a resolution that Marcy had read earlier, but it's a resolution introducing local law number blank of 2022, which would amend Chapter 240 zoning, Chapter 210 solid waste, littering and storage of garbage, and Chapter 217 subdivision of land of the town code with respect to a variety of matters. This is really almost identical to what we had discussed before and was withdrawn, but we have Malcolm here, and they've done a little bit more work. So, Barbara, do you want to just set the stage for what we're doing with
I'm
this?
going to be very honest before we go any further. This town board requested in December that we did not group these.
Right, so.
So, based on that, I want to table this.
The reason why we're grouping it is it will cost us $100,000 or more in order to do this, Angela. But Barbara's here to explain why we're not grouping
I don't know what the
it.
cost would be, but
Yes.
for each one, Malcolm could speak more to that since they write most of them. Each one would have to have its own secret document with it. Each one would have to have its own public hearing advertisement, and each one would have to be codified. And I know in past years, it's very expensive. What that would break out to,
Probably
you'd
might
have
not.
to ask the different people to give you an estimate. So that's where we're at.
I don't think it's practical, to do that. I think it's going to be.
One of the things that could be done in the future is when there, whether it's 10 or 20 items, there could be a cover sheet that actually lists each item and a description of it, so you know it's.
And I think
No,
that's
we-
consistent with the
We
resident
had
has.
asked that the planner come and explain this to us.
So he's
okay?
here.
And
No,
he's here.
no, not grouped, not bunched. And you heard that, right?
Yes,
So if we could have had the planner come and explain it to the board, before we even went this far?
These
That's
are the
all
same
I'm asking.
proposals that we've had before. You know, we need to move ahead with these items, and it's not productive or efficient to single them out by item as we've discussed. That's why we're discussing it today, and that's why we have the planner here to set the stage so we can discuss it further. If you want to belabor the point and have us discuss each item ad nauseum, it doesn't make sense.
As I said, the board requested
Right.
in December that things were not bunched. Am I correct, board?
And we're coming
Am I
back to
correct?
re-present this to
Am I
ask the
correct?
board to consider this.
Yes, however, the only thing I will say is that moving forward, that's what we said, this one was already prepared, that's the only issue. Now, the point that I'm hearing right now is this seeker was done as a bundled seeker, correct? That's the issue. So the seeker was done already with the verbiage that already appeared previously. So I didn't think about the cost of codifying either, because I remember we've gone through
Right.
this years ago where we blew the budget apart, codifying all these local laws individually under previous administration. So we got to have a conversation about that too, because if you're making changes to, section G of 240-55, which talks about farm animals being enclosed with fencing, something like that, one sentence change, having to codify every single section with one sentence changes is going to be very expensive.
Well, I don't know the cost, but I can find out, but it's not hundreds of thousands.
No, not hundreds, I said 100,000, not hundreds of thousands.
Even 100.
Yeah.
Last
Time,
budget,
you know-
The budget was 8,000 for the entire 5 laws.
Right, because it was done together, Joe, rather than
No, I'm saying
individually.
5 laws, if you had 3 more,
Right.
it wouldn't be much more than 2,000 per law, so.
Right, but the
Well,
point
but-
though,
But to the point, though, it's more than just the codification in the code.
Right.
It's preparing the local laws, having the public hearings,
Yeah.
advertising the public hearings, drafting the public hearing notices, drafting the local laws.
yeah.
So, I mean, you can do them in tandem, but, if you do each one separately,
Right.
you can, it does cost more money. I mean, the other option that the board has is you can consider it all as one, and then if there's provisions that you don't like, you can strike them out.
Right.
I mean,
I
once
think
it's
I-
introduced.
I think what the flavor of the discussion was previously is for each one of these changes, we do need to have an opportunity for discussion with the planner and the director of strategic planning. So
First,
as minute as some of these changes may be, whether it be about garbage receptacles or whatever, sounds crazy, but I think the board does need the opportunity to say, okay, I see it, the garbage receptacle situation, and if we have a question for the planner,
we
you
could
know.
address it.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's what they're here for
Oh,
tonight.
I understand that. This one already was born, like, this one already started when we made that statement. I think moving forward, we need to have specific conversations to each change. In this one, we can have a conversation right now. I've looked through this, and I think some of these conversations we've actually had before, when it talks about enclosed fencing for farm animals. And I was in the middle of guinea hen gate in Houstonville for
Right.
God knows how long back in the day. I don't know what happened to all the guinea hens, but now I have chickens behind me, right? I think the chickens live in a tiny house. I've never quite seen this type of arrangement. It's got lights, it's got heat. We do need to address those types of things. Exterior lighting, obviously, is discussed here. Do we need to talk about ATM candle power? I don't know. These are things that are being updated in the code. And people are getting into the LEDs now, right? And there's some standards that have changed to LED. I think we do need to address that, which is what I think I see here with respect to, environmental light pollution per se, whatever it's called now. But then if you look into other sections here, these are minor changes for the most part. The electric vehicle charging station section, I do want to take a moment, and I'm glad, Malcolm, you're here, because, I understand here in the great state of New York, we want to try to follow the trends, right? However, When it comes to electric vehicle charging stations, my question would be, is this a standard that's now being followed based on code requirements, or is this a requirement that is a feel-good thing in New York State?
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, the answer is that it's in response to good planning. We got a letter back from Dutchess County. They're pursuing this or various forms of this, mostly from my understanding, more aggressive forms of this throughout the county.
But it's not a law. It's not a law.
I'm sorry?
It's not a law.
No, we don't have to, no. It was just, it was conceived out of, trying to think ahead. Really, the backbone of this is that when people are constructing these parking lots, the added cost of laying the wiring so that you can go in after the fact and add charging stations down the line is dwarfed compared to the cost that would be associated with coming in 5 years, 7 years down the line when they are being required either by a law or by market forces, and cutting up your parking lot to put these in later. So the way that this is drafted, you would not be expected to put these charging stations in. You certainly could if you chose to, but at the very least what you would have to do is put in the infrastructure so that they could be added relatively easy and inexpensively down the line.
How much is that going to cost a developer estimate? An estimate.
An estimate? Do you have an idea of how big of the parking lot? Because it's 10%.
Let's say 5 of them. Put in 5 of them.
5 of them, I would say that would be an additional, and I'm estimating, but $1,500, $3,000 for
Each or just for all
no,
of them?
collectively for those 5 spaces. Because all we're talking about is once you've dug up the parking lot, once you're in the process of construction, you're just laying the conduits, you're laying those wires out. So it could even be less than that, but I'm also assuming that they're not putting in the charging stations right away. They're just
putting in the conduits and the
So
electrical.
why not just make it a suggestion, a
Right.
heavily suggestion, saying these are the trends going, rather than make it law?
And leave it up to the
That's-
developer instead of forcing them to do it.
Because in my experience, they won't.
If you were a developer, would you?
I would, yeah.
Okay.
So there's all due respect, there's a greater philosophical question here, though. Call me ignorant. I mean, I don't get free gas when I park my car in a parking lot of new development. I don't understand. I still got to pay $4 a gallon when I'm driving my truck around, but someone that has an electric car is going to get a free charge.
It's
correct?
not my impression that the charging would be free. I don't know that it would be. I have no reason to think that it would be. From my understanding, they're not. Unless unless you're driving a Tesla and you're parking at a Tesla charging station, there are certain promotions. But I'm not under the impression that these would charge electric cars for free.
Yeah, for the most part, it's short, you would have to pay, either by credit card or something else, but NYSERDA does have some programs that are currently around where, to encourage it, they will, NYSERDA will do the installations, and it's free charging, I think, for 3 years after the installation.
Yeah, the program.
So, so there are some programs out there. I mean, one of the other options as far as leaving it to the developer is you could put it as a requirement, but the planning board could waive it.
Right, but is it
That's
government's
the other-
responsibility, though, Jim? Is it really the government's responsibility to tell a developer that they have to put in electric charging stations? That's the greater question here.
Exactly.
No, I mean, yeah, but to the extent that, and one of the things is that if you had to come back and tear up your parking lot, and this is one of the things that's kind of unclear in our code, is just to put in a charging station, would you have to come in and do a site plan amendment and everything else, which is,
But who's going to make you put it in?
New York State.
So, but it's not a law.
Not right now, but I would envision that to be a law within the next 5 years.
Yeah.
If
be clear,
if
we're
not,
not-
But I
if
think
not
we
a
could go
federal-
back and address it in the next 5 years.
So what
versus-
jurisdiction does New York State have over local planning and local development?
They don't, but they have, well, actually they do, basically they're the police power, and they've delegated to the towns by the New York State Constitution the power to zone. However, you know, there's a whole bunch of things, and frankly, where it's gonna come from is it's gonna come from the energy code.
Right.
New
but
York State is going to adopt it through the energy code
Right.
and maybe nationally.
This is the same energy code that is making it illegal for new construction to connect to natural gas, correct?
Exactly.
That would be
I
the
mean,
same
this
code.
whole,
I-
this
I
this
agree with you
whole thing,
100%.
I'm sorry, this whole thing is getting way out of control. It's an overreach.
Yep.
It's an overreach, okay? And now, if the state of New York is going to dictate that towns will require new applications to put charging stations in, there's gonna be a heck of a lot of litigation involved when it comes to that, in my opinion. And I'll be happy to authorize that if we're in that position, because there is so much hypocrisy and double standard going on here. I was on this board not long ago when we were encouraging people to switch to natural gas.
Yes.
And we were encouraging everyone to move in that direction. And now, all of a sudden, everything has changed now. New York City now has made it a requirement that
That's right.
there be no natural gas connections to new construction.
And that's ridiculous.
And it has to be electric. How is that more efficient?
It's not.
How is the electricity being made? So there is a greater philosophical issue going on here that I am uncomfortable with, and I'm uncomfortable with requiring applicants to put electric charging stations in new construction.
I agree.
I agree.
I would just chime in that we're not requiring them to put in the stations. When you're setting out your wiring to power the lights in the parking lot and things like that, what this code would ask you to do is
Consider.
to lay out a little bit more wiring so that if you choose to put in an electric charging station, either due to market forces or a law in the next 5 to 10 years, that, you know, we asked you to spend $1,000 now, so it doesn't cost you $10,000.
That's not our job, Malcolm. All due respect, that's not our job.
Exactly.
So
You
make
can
that
make it an
suggestion.
option. That's
Make that
it.
suggestion and let it fall on the contractor.
I mean, if I'm
Exactly.
It's
if
just-
I'm a
I-
developer and I decide that I want to be in a position where I want to put electric charging stations in to charge people, okay? Then
Right.
that's up to me. That's up to me as the owner of that
Exactly.
property. I don't know where this ends in New York State, but I
Yeah.
can tell you it's not going in the right direction on a lot of things.
And I agree 100%.
We, as the local level representatives, in my opinion, have to be very concerned about property rights. That is the very basis and foundation of why we're sitting here. We have to find that balance where people that own property are able to develop that property and use that property consistent with our zoning, right? But I don't think it's our business to be micromanaging specific political things. And I believe that there is a political aspect to this. And I don't want to see politics in our zoning code.
I agree.
I mean, the other option would be that you could put it basically as a suggestion in the site plan application, not make it mandatory.
And leave it up to the applicant
But
to,
encourage the applicant to put it in and show it.
I think that's the better way to
Sure,
do it.
Just leave it up to the
Something
developer
like,
to make the
this is what
decision.
New York State sees in the future. This is our suggestion, but again, like Bill said, I can't agree with requiring it by
No.
law.
I mean, I think ultimately, at the end of the day, if an applicant, if a developer was coming in, and most developers, I think you see, do include them in there, whether they're not. I think one of the things out also is if you put in some suggestive language that may not be mandatory, in going through the site plan application, some less sophisticated developers may look at, the suggestion and say, hey, you know what, that's a good idea when
Because
developing their plan.
there is an upfront cost, as Malcolm said, but down the road, it's probably less expensive if you put it in now versus having to dig it
Right.
up later on. But I think you need to make it up to the applicant. If they so choose to do it, it's going to cost them either way. But I agree, the upfront cost is going to probably be much smaller than if you have to dig it up later on and put the
I mean, the only
conduit and stuff in
problem
there.
is you kind of have to guess right as to what you're going to put in the future.
Yeah, where,
It's also very expensive to have an electric car.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the other thing.
Well, there's another, electric cars, during the temperatures we just had over the last few days,
We're not
have been proving
starting.
to be nothing but problems. There's also other issues with electric cars that are, if New York State is saying we should do this, that right there is my reservation.
Exactly.
I'm telling you right now, because most of the things that are coming from the state of New York have an agenda that, in my opinion, is inconsistent with my beliefs. And I'm not going to tell, if it's going to start first with commercials, it may end up being residentials in this state, okay? And that's not anything I want in our code.
What am I gonna do when they tell somebody that has gas to their house right now, you can't have gas anymore? Because I have natural gas going in my house, you can't have it anymore.
Well,
Where do we-
they're not going to
where
tell
do
you,
we-
they're
where
just
do
going
we-
to jack
where
the
do we
price
draw
up.
the line?
Yeah, well,
I feel a developer has the right to make the decision. If he wants to do it, fine. If he doesn't want to do it, that's okay.
we're
and leave
dealing,
it at
we're
that.
dealing with soaring energy prices right now, okay? Every step of the way, whether
And-
it be
and it's
gas
not
for your
personal to
car,
you.
whether it be, I have natural gas, my Central Hudson bill has never been higher, okay?
Oh.
Whether it be electric or whether it be gas, you know, and then the latest movement where all of a sudden natural gas is now,
Evil.
you know, wrong and bad for the environment. I mean, we need to be consistent in our principles here, and that's my opinion, that we cannot overreach, and this to me is an overreach. I understand, all due respect, Malcolm, there are best practices in planning. I'm familiar with many of them. We talked about some of them earlier with the other applicant. This right here, in my opinion, should be the decision of the property owner.
Exactly.
So do we need to have that in there, or can we strike this one? Because again, that was one of the issues we had with the
strike it.
bundling, so.
We can withdraw.
Yeah, it depends if you want to strike it or if you want to replace it with the non-mandatory language, the advisory language that we had discussed.
We could always change it down the line.
Yeah.
I'd say
you
we
can add
re-
that to the
we
next
remove it
bundle and we
now.
can strike this
So
one.
I think
We
the
remove it
thing to
now
do
and
is
deal
you
with it
remove
later.
this one, because this one seems to have a lot more discussion,
Right.
and it's
Yeah,
controversial,
that's
so
fine.
I think that's something you probably take out of the particular. Now, is there any others we want to look at?
I just, you know
Yeah,
what?
I'm sorry, Chris.
To Angela's words before, one of the reasons why we had asked previously, and you weren't here, is to not bundle these, is because when we get a stack of these, and people like myself, you start reading some of the stuff, and it's like, okay, that's why we want you to come here. Could you just give us a quick step-by-step on all these, so we know exactly what we're voting on, and we're not surprised down the road?
So we'll skip section 1 and 2, that's title and legislative intent.
Okay.
There's very little in there, that's just procedural. Section 3 is where we get into the amendments to chapter 240, which is zoning.
Yep.
New section will be added, that's G, all farm animals will be enclosed with fencing, which is of such design as to keep all animals contained within fencing enclosure. That is relatively straightforward.
Yep.
Then we got section 2. Depending on which section, there's a clean version and there's a red line version. If you're looking at the red line version, you've got that colored text which shows you what's being added there to the existing section describing outdoor storage, which is that the receptacles need to be placed along the street line, but only on days in which such garbage and refuse is collected, which I think is, again, straightforward, but I'm happy to talk about that more. I think that there will be.
I think there's a definition issue, only in days in which garbage is collection, but people put it out the night before, and
Right.
then it's difficult sometimes, the next day, so I think we need to have some leniency.
As we
Yeah.
know,
I
on some
agree.
roads, we have
We're-
people
No,
living
you
out
have to have-
7 days.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, right?
Right,
And we
so
have a number of
To
those
Jim and
problems.
Barbara, I know you guys are out there, you've visited my street many
Yeah,
times.
right.
We've
Due to
had
My
emails.
street as
Yeah.
well,
Due
and
to complaints, we are not running around daily looking to see whose garbage cans
We know that,
are.
but what is, I mean, end of the day, after months of this just seems like there's no results. And we know you've issued tickets, and the courts are like 8 years behind schedule, we know that. I mean, is there any, we're doing this, is there any bite to it?
Can we enforce
So
it?
we've had nothing in writing before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is
Okay.
for a particular number, maybe less than 10 people in the
Right.
town, who put their garbage cans on the street and leave them out literally forever.
Yes.
And they just
Correct.
come down their driveway, put their garbage in. It's a problem for the garbage, for Michael.
And they
if
leave
he
it
had to
literally on the
plow.
street.
Yes.
The neighbors are very upset about this, and so we get calls constantly about the garbage cans. In high winds, they get knocked over into the road. So a lot of people, because the code's online, they want us to show them in the code that they can't leave them out indefinitely.
Okay.
And that was what brought this up.
But I think, Malcolm, we need to have a little bit more flexibility in the wording. It can't be
Well, it
just
has
the
to be
day on which it's.
specific.
Yeah.
I mean-
I agree.
I-
But
and-
just on the day on which it's collected doesn't
Yeah, you
doesn't
can't
work.
just,
You
yeah.
make
You
it
know,
too
and-
rigid, and then nobody
In
can
my
conform.
mind.
If
As
somebody
a,
gets home from work at 2 o'clock in the morning because they work second shift,
As
you
a
think they're gonna
frequent-
just left their garbage can up
As a
when it's
frequent
snowing and
violator
raining?
of this,
No.
let me comment, as a frequent violator, can we say 24 hours prior and 48 hours after?
Yes, you have to have a number in there.
I'm okay with that because really the core violators that we're talking
Yeah.
about are much longer than that.
Yes.
People just leave them out 7 days a week.
Right, so to be honest, if
I don't leave 'em out
driving
7 days,
around,
but-
I don't know from street to
Only-
street
only
what
6
day
days.
you're
Wife
stuck.
gets on me.
I'm sorry, Barbara, what?
Sorry.
If I'm driving, I wouldn't know, say, on your street,
Right.
what day your garbage is.
Correct.
So if we ask someone to bring them in, it's due to multiple complaints
Right.
from the surrounding neighbors who are unhappy with it. And this way we can say, yes, you can leave them if your garbage is Wednesday, but by Friday afternoon, could you bring them in before the weekend?
But I think it's good you have a date,
Right.
you need
A
to say
certainty.
within
You
48
need an
hours.
end
something
date.
to-
You need a
Bill
start
You
and end
can't
date.
right?
just
It's-
say,
no,
you gotta.
I mean,
24
we'll be in
hours.
violation. They'll come looking for us.
So my garbage truck comes early morning on Friday, right? So,
Right, same here.
so if you put it out Thursday, shouldn't be a big deal, right? Because it's coming early morning Friday, right? Then you have until Saturday,
Yeah.
right?
Bring it home.
Right?
Take it
48
back.
hours?
That's fine.
Actually, it'll be Sunday. You have it till Sunday. However, there is somebody on Osborne Hill Road who leaves their garbage can on the street 7 days and just throws the bags in it.
That's what we're talking
Exactly,
about.
and that's what we're talking about.
That's not what you're supposed to be doing.
No.
No,
But you have
that's
to
right.
incorporate,
Well, if you have a long
That's fine.
driveway, sometimes, like on your street, that's what people do, because it's easier to take it in the car, drive it
No,
down.
you can't do that.
I agree.
no.
So can we say 24 hours prior to pickup and up to
Yeah.
48 hours after? Because
Right.
I
That's
think, Jim,
fair.
that's
Yeah.
specificity, right? I mean, that's okay?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing is, if you go into court, you're gonna probably need an affidavit from Carter as to when the pickup is.
the courts aren't even prosecuting low-level misdemeanors, and we're worried about,
We're worried about the garbage
What about
cans.
garbage cans not being
you
picked
know?
up? No.
But it's more of a matter of principle, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah,
And believe it or
exactly.
not, I get told, show me where I have to bring it in.
Right, right. At least we have a
I'm
guideline.
sure you do.
The
I'm
acceptable
sure.
standard is, I think that helps.
I'm sure.
I mean, the one issue in our code actually in 210 is that we have a very old limitation on the size of the cans. Technically, the green Royal Carting cans are not permitted under our code because we have a limitation. I believe it's no greater than
Really?
35
You
gallons.
you gotta fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
That
Yeah.
might be from the 1980s when they had
So
little
it's
kids.
the old.
But Royal Carting, they won't
Trash
collect
can
anything else,
list.
will they?
Right.
You said
No.
210
Only if you
dash
give a
what?
good Christmas tip.
Oh,
Yeah.
Not that I know. No, but if you have, like, sometimes, after Christmas, I had an overflowing can,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
put another can next to it
Right.
just to see, maybe they'll take it, and they did.
Yeah, they do.
But, yeah, what we have in our code is the old garbage can.
Because it said,
You
has
gotta-
all the
you
lids.
gotta-
So whatever the
Metals
number of
and-
gallons, my understanding is
you know,
Royal has
old-
the larger,
old ash can.
the larger containers, I think, are like 50 gallons or
Yes.
something, and then
Right.
there is
The
a,
The
senior,
largest
the
one's a
senior
90.
there's
container.
a
Yeah.
senior
They're-
container
yeah.
that's smaller.
That's like.
Much smaller,
probably
about
30
half the
gallons.
size.
So we should also
You
address
should-
that.
especially for recyclable things, they have a very small one.
So you can incorporate that?
A definition, or look at
Size.
amending the current definition of permitted sizes for garbage
Yeah,
cans.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Please,
these-
thank you.
Now, the seasonal decorations, my wife would probably want those in the garbage, so they can.
I thought you wanted to have flamingo,
My inflatables, she would probably say don't exempt those, but.
Would you like to move on, or?
Yeah, that's good.
Yes,
Okay.
Sure,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
So this is the biggest section. I work with the planning board a lot, and we have been running into issues with the general lack of specificity in the lighting code, the existing lighting code. In particular, and combined with that, there is the transition away from older lighting fixtures towards LED fixtures. There's a lack of understanding a lot of the times regarding those, and there's been a lot of what we would call lighting pollution, which is glare shining into the street, shining into people's eyes, shining into other people's property. It becomes a nuisance. There are
Right.
ecological implications to it.
Sure.
So what we had drafted was this lighting code. You have your intent and purpose. All exterior lighting in connection with all building signs or other uses shall be directed away from adjoining streets and properties, and have such shielding as will prevent unreasonable or objectionable glare observed from streets and properties. Now, since the last time it was before you, we added the sentence at the end of B, which was at the behest of the Dutchess County Department of Planning, so that all fixtures shall be downlit, full cutoff, and dark sky compliant as identified and updated by the International Dark Sky Association. Now, that association is a nonprofit organization that works to combat lighting pollution, and we thought that it was worth mentioning because they do a lot of work looking at new designs for lights, for lighting fixtures, and updating the category of what they recommend and what they don't recommend. And this way, rather than coming back to you each year with changes to what fixtures are or not allowed, we would allow them to make those recommendations, and it certainly makes it a lot easier for me and for Barbara and her office in terms of review and enforcement of plans as to which
So I
lighting fixtures are
have a
permitted.
question on the hours of lighting, right? So we've had some incidents where some neighbors reflect lights into other people's houses, et cetera, and we talked about hours of lighting here. Is there,
Talking about D, section,
yeah, section D, that's correct. So what I'm trying to figure out here is, do we have something where there's either a date, time, something where we can minimize some of that stuff that happens?
Right.
You're talking about residential versus.
Residential.
Residential.
Yeah, but
This
this is commercial.
This is commercial.
yeah. Would you like to see additions regarding residential lighting?
Yeah, I
think we
would.
should, yeah, I mean,
I think we do. I think we probably have some people in the audience that are
yeah.
concerned with some of those issues today, and I think they need to be
Right.
addressed. So again, I know this is commercial, but I would also like to make some changes for the
Because there is
residential.
For
problem out there,
residential
yeah.
issues. Now, what you're talking about, are you talking, I guess my question to you would be, do you think that would be best combated in terms of the design of the lighting or the hours at which you're
Hours.
allowed to keep that lit?
Hours.
Okay.
My neighbor across the street has LED lights, both houses blasting into our
Yeah.
home, and it's never been
Well,
we have to have a black shade.
What's the new LED lights? Absolutely, but it's also, right, they're keeping them on all night, and they're shooting them across their yard and into your house.
I think we should have a class on how to aim your lights, because half of my block, those security
Yeah, I know.
lights.
You know what's
shining-
interesting now is the
Street lamps.
LED fixtures that people have on their, above their garages. Cars drive down the street and activate them, I'm noticing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And now they're, 2 o'clock in the morning, all their
Yeah.
lights are going on as a car
Yeah.
drives down, and,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
so bright, it lights up
I
the
agree.
whole. So I don't know if we'll probably have to have a separate discussion about this, because that's new technology, and I think it's some uncharted territory here.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the other issue too is, the general precept in zoning is that, anything that exists prior is grandfathered. And so right now, we don't really have any kind of site plan requirements for individual homes. So for the, unless you draft something pretty carefully, you're not gonna capture all the lighting that's out there currently. You'd have to, do that under your police powers, not necessarily.
No, but we can
under your
put something
zoning powers.
together, and we can always revise it, correct?
Agreed.
So again, what you're gonna do is put a framework together, kind of like we've done on some of the issues today. You put a framework together like we did for Kevin Hawthorne.
Yeah, I mean,
And use that as, and then what we can do is we can modify as we see changes that are needed. And I think that's what we need to take a look at.
So these lighting changes have been, they're for the commercial that go to the planning board, and the planning board has been asking emphatically to please get the code changed so that as new sites come to them, they can require, instead of suggest, without pushback. What you're talking about is more of an enforcement issue with residential.
Right.
So,
Well,
and I
first
do get a lot of
definitional, then
complaints
enforcement.
about
Right.
cameras or strong lighting blinding their neighbor, especially at night, and there's nothing in the code in a private resident, again, police, telling people not to go to Home Depot and buy spotlights and shine them at their
So I
neighbors.
apologize for going off commercial
No, I
versus
think it's
residential,
very-
but
No,
I figured
I
as long as
was
we're
gonna-
talking about hours of
We need to
lighting,
raise it. I mean,
I wanted to bring that up
think-
because we are getting a lot of,
I mean,
Yeah, I just think it would be
Issues.
a separate, it would be a
Separate
separate
right.
entity.
correct.
Right.
This has to do more with site plan approval and a lot
Well,
of the residential
then
development.
work on a
have-
separate entity, separate wording, for
Right,
this
so
issue.
separate
Its own-
enactment.
Yeah, separate
Yeah, that could be a
enactment, okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Barbara, does this address also the issue, and Malcolm, that we've had with Central Hudson going and changing lighting fixtures without
Not in the
approval?
residential.
No, I know not residential, I mean in the commercial.
Right, this will help, but we're still working on, with Central Hudson, Sarah Brown, and I and Malcolm have been working with Central Hudson, where they give permits out to change lighting fixtures, commercial or residential, and put lights up and then charge them without us knowing
Right.
about it. So I
Right,
have,
because they pay
without
for
naming
it.
the street, he asked for more lighting on his telephone pole, and it lights up his front yard, but it also lights up his neighbors.
Right.
And he pays a nominal fee every month,
Right.
and he's happy and his neighbors are not happy. And so when we asked Central Hudson, they said, we do that all over. And
Yeah.
We were surprised. And so with the commercial, we said, then you should at least have to get a permit so that the planner can look and make sure that the lighting you're putting on a commercial lot doesn't supersede our lighting code. They weren't happy because part of this is their program with these subcontractors to save them money, with changing things to LED. And they feel by asking for a permit, then that's it's harming the small business owner.
Yeah, but as we know, it's
So
creating
we're working with
problems.
that there has to be some way to change, because you have a site plan that's been approved by the planning board here
Yep.
with a certain lighting,
Right.
photometric. So now, just because they call, if they have 3 more lights put on telephone poles or some other way, and it lights it up like an airport, we have no
You can't say anything,
jurisdiction over
right.
it. So
Right.
that is a problem we're trying to
Yes.
work on.
So I think we need to address that in separate enactment or however we do it, Malcolm,
Maybe a
right?
separate code for
Okay.
residential.
I think so, because we have a couple residents
Yeah.
here that
No, I know.
specifically address
Absolutely.
that, so.
Yeah.
She's got a question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dawn, go
So
ahead.
Dawn,
I would just like to ask, when you do the residential, that you, take under consideration that on certain security cameras, when there are the lights that come on, kind of like when something comes, they're not on constantly, but when something comes
Motion sensitive or it's infrared.
Right.
There's also infrared issues and so forth, that are targeted.
some of us have them on for reasons, like mailboxes that have been broken during the night, or certain off-road vehicles that have done damage. We have them for reasons to not to cause unwanted lighting to other people, but they're for our own security. So that's another reason when you write up, you just keep in mind on certain wording that you use, because certain lighting is necessary for protection.
Sure.
Right, so we'll look at that, but.
yeah, so you need to take that into consideration when we just update the code.
We'd really have to research that.
Right.
I think we're gonna be real careful with this single-family dwelling legislation, real careful, because
Yeah.
I'm not sure,
Very.
again, I go to Home Depot and I buy a light and I put it on my house, and now the town shows up and says I can't have that light. I'm not sure how that's gonna go down. And, what do you do, call the cops if the person has, I don't even know. I understand if there's a nuisance factor to it, then.
Well, see, that's I think the core issue, Bill.
That's
where
more the
there's-
issue. It's not the
Yeah.
typical, hey, we drive by your house, your
Right.
spotlight goes on. It's more of somebody shining it into somebody else's
There's a deliberate
house
or
residence.
intentional nuisance,
Which is why we
issue.
didn't even try to address
Right.
that.
Or a light that isn't shielded and always comes in through the bedroom window.
Yeah.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But
Well,
but
it's
you're
all of
right,
them
I
now.
mean,
They're so
devil's
bright,
in the
yeah.
details, we're gonna have to work on the wording,
Correct.
but I think it goes to the point,
But
we do
we're-
need something, because we don't have that ability.
Right, correct.
To address these issues.
Yeah.
Sorry to go off track.
All right,
I
now,
just-
Malcolm,
I
you
just-
got it?
I
What-
just
the
have
intent?
one comment.
Yeah, okay.
I just have one comment regarding the light at the property line.
Which section is this?
It
Is it
refers to
this,
it as
or-
0,
Yeah,
okay, which I think is unobtainable.
0 foot candles?
Right.
Well, it would be 0 foot candles based on the lights that you are proposing, right?
I mean, it doesn't say that, but the Dark Sky Society recommends the light levels at the property line should not exceed 0.1 foot candles adjacent to business properties and 0.05 foot candles at residential property boundaries.
Okay, well, let's look into the, we have a number of changes, but I agree, I understand what you're saying, Jim. I
You know,
think it's
'cause,
worthy to
I mean,
examine that.
you could say the delta has, 0, but I don't know necessarily on the photometric plans if you're gonna show 0 at the property boundary. I think if,
In my experience, it is possible. I mean, in reality, you come into the issue with, moonlighting or neighbors lighting or things like that. It complicates things. But when
Right.
you're looking at the photometrics of the lights that, say you're
Right.
proposing on your commercial property, you can get to 0 at the property line.
Appreciate a comment.
Well, doesn't it say between 2 and 5 is a suitable range?
Yeah, for areas that you are intending to light, not for the
Okay.
entire site, right? That would be your entrance, your building entrance, pedestrian pathways,
Yeah.
things like that. That's intended to show that you certainly don't need to be above 5.
Right.
Right.
In my experience, an average that is closer to 1 for the site is very attainable and reasonable. And that, at a range of 2 to 5.
Okay.
Where are you looking? I'm sorry. Yeah, 2 to 5. Yeah, absolutely. And trying to create a maximum is important for us because based on the current code, if you want to have a floodlight on the top of your business that doesn't extend past your property line, there's nothing in the code that says that you can't have as bright a light as you want. You could go up to 50-foot candles if you'd like. And so what we're trying to do is put a cap on, you really don't need anything more than 5.
The next one that I have also concern about is pole heights. So on my former property, we had a telephone pole. It was designed for security, but also, part of the security was we would have, more than occasional traffic collisions with our fence as they failed to take the turn. And we had to have it more than 15 feet and have the right sort of camera, not a glaring one that Hayden Wayne would, complain about, but for security purposes. So
You're
as
saying
the
that your
security
camera would be
cameras,
posted?
because you have a fence, we have fence and so forth, and for a large property, but I can see, certain ones, we need to look at that,
This is
because
just
I'm
for
concerned
commercial.
about,
This is just for commercial.
just for commercial, okay.
This whole lighting code, right,
Okay,
Malcolm, is
okay.
really just addressing
Yeah.
site plans, commercial site plans.
I also, Jim, weigh in on this if you don't read it this
So-
way, but based on section F, I think that if you wanted to have a 20-foot or 25-foot pole so that you could put a camera at the top of it, all this is saying is you can't mount your light more than 15 feet above the ground.
So Barbara, in light of that, this section, you're saying 240-23 is just commercial?
Well,
Then, for the legislative intent or something, we should define it as commercial, because I think a lot of it doesn't read that, including paragraph
So
A.
this one, F, it does say in all districts, but as Malcolm pointed out, they're just talking for the height of the light, not to exceed 15 feet as measured from the ground. Now, there are always
Maximum pole height,
Right, there's
for
always,
any light.
due to
Yeah.
topography, there could be waivers.
Right.
For instance, the sign at Mini Prestige at the time, there was like a ravine at Route 9, so the pole started like 6 feet below the ground, so that was considered in the 10-foot pole height, so I'm not sure if it's
Okay.
exactly 6 feet, but say the pole was allowed to be 16 feet because at grade, it was only 10 foot high.
I also
Now,
think,
if
I
you,
mean, we've
if you
been-
look at Adams, I'm assuming those poles are much higher than 15 feet.
I believe they got a variance.
Okay, so it's,
Oh, you mean, I'm sorry, I'm thinking the sign, the poles.
no, I'm talking about the
Yeah,
pole,
the
light
poles.
poles.
Yeah,
I mean, they're
yeah.
30 feet and high, or, no?
I can't imagine they're 15 feet. I mean, Tractor Supply,
Yeah.
BJ's, they can't, they gotta be 30 feet high.
That's what I'm saying, so.
What is the objective of doing a 15-foot limit on this? What if a tractor trailer drives by? I mean, you know, I don't understand what the point of the 15-foot max in all
Yeah,
districts is.
to-
So
To
the
your point.
height restriction is intended to restrict glare, the idea that a light is high enough and shining such that it obstructs the vision of a driver or whomever may be impacted by that. Typically, these lights get very tall because you can light a bigger area.
Well, that's my point, so
Wouldn't
isn't
it be better
pole
to be
height
higher?
dependent on the size, the area? I mean, if you wanted to redo BJ's, I mean, that parking lot is a few football fields.
Yeah.
You obviously would need a much higher pole
Correct.
height to start, to efficiently light it. I mean,
Sure,
Right.
but when you get higher poles,
Right.
you reduce the number of poles, you get them taller. What you're also going to be wanting to do is increase their brightness, right? Because you're illuminating a wider area, and then we run into the issue of overlighting and light pollution. It's
In
a
commercial.
balancing act. I mean, it does get very fine-tuned. But it is a balancing act, and that's what we're trying to reduce. Because as a developer, what you're trying to do is do it as inexpensively as possible. And so
Sure.
you want taller poles with brighter lights, and that comes with disadvantages for the rest of us, right?
I think, you know, the particular concern is where we have all these different, you know, commercial districts that are abutting our residential districts, right?
It's
And
all
so
over
that's,
line, right?
that I
Yeah.
think is what Barbara and
Yeah,
you
that
were
makes
trying
sense.
to address, so
Neighborhood
they don't get
business.
too high, so that they glare into the resident's backyard.
it seems like the technology today, though, is such that
Directional.
they're very directional. I mean, you can go to stadiums and it's literally dark outside the stadium.
Yeah.
And you look in and it's
Right.
lit up.
It's daytime.
Because it's done professionally, it's done
Yeah.
probably at a
There's
much
very
higher
no
But
cost.
Yeah.
to
I
Joe's
understand
point,
that.
though, in residential, across the street, it's widely dispersed, right? It's not a directional for the purpose of,
So I understand the intent, but to some of the comments, I think it needs to be looked at.
The height of the poles?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
Take another
because,
look at that?
you
Sure.
know, for an average, you know, a small place, I could see you having that, but, you know, if you're trying to light up a stadium, it's,
There is a general provision at the end of the section L waivers, and it says the planning board may waive the lighting requirements of 240-23 in cases where the planning board determines that better site design or safety can be achieved with the lighting that does not comply with this section. So there's flexibility in
Okay.
here.
And then if the developer is of the opinion that they do really need this to plan and light this site efficiently, they make that case to the planning board, the waiver is granted, and they don't need a variance, which lasts in perpetuity. I would also like to clarify something. We've been talking about this only affecting commercial. I think that functionally, it will only affect commercial, but I do think that it applies to all zoning districts. And what I mean by functionally is that this would only come into play when you've come before the planning board with a site plan.
Right.
And if you're building as of right on on a single family plot, you don't need to come in. You just need a building permit. You don't need to come in with a site plan. But if there was a multifamily or a mixed use project that, you know, was not strictly commercial but did need a site plan, these provisions would apply to that as well.
What is the code saying right now for pole heights?
There's nothing in the lighting code as,
I
It
think
would
we have a
just be the
35
restriction, but probably
35-foot height.
35 foot, which is structure for.
which is for all
permitted in this-
structures, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like by capping at 15 feet right out of the gate
Right.
here is, I mean, I need to look at this more. I mean,
right?
Yeah,
Agreed.
I do too.
No, I agree.
you know, I understand the intent here is to limit light pollution and wash into areas that it shouldn't go. You know, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Route 9 from Myers Corner south is so dark. We've had pedestrians struck multiple times.
Yeah.
because of this entire philosophy of less lighting. There's a philosophy of less lighting. When Central Hudson now converts over to an LED on Route 9, they're focused on the intersection only, right? Look at 9 and Old Hopewell. They got a little tiny square lit up, and a person gets hit by a car 20 feet away, walking across
Yep.
the Stone Gate.
I know.
And I brought this up, and they say, well, that's the new way. The new way is to light less.
Yeah.
And
Even
I
in
said,
the-
well, I'm not so sure I subscribe to that. Especially when we're on a major corridor where we have adequate lighting from the village of Wappingers Falls to 9 and Myers, and then from Myers Corners south, there's inadequate lighting, and every time they put a new light up, it lights up a smaller area.
Right.
Because they want to prevent light pollution. So that I have some issues with that. And when we talk about signs, and we've had this conversation before, we have a major commercial corridor that has the smallest signs between two towns. And this whole, conservative approach to not wanting to create too much signage or too much lighting, I believe can work against us because people can't see what.
You can't read the
exactly
signs.
right. No,
Yeah.
exactly right, Bill.
So I want to just come back to this, this particular pole height discussion after I do some research on my own. I appreciate what you're trying to do in preventing light pollution. I get that, but I think there's a fine line between light pollution and appropriate lighting. So,
Absolutely.
thank
No,
you.
I agree. The same thing on 9D. There's lights on the poles that don't light
9D
anymore.
is terrible.
They just don't light anymore.
Well, they have the Cobra heads, the old school Cobra heads that light up a whole area, right? And then under the contract we have with Central Hudson, when those go bad, they replace them with the new LED technology that lights up about 5 inches.
Right.
So-
But they're not even lighting.
Yeah.
The new
So-
ones they're putting, it's
that's right.
ridiculous.
So anyway, we can
But
just,
I think, the one thing though is highway lighting is in some respects a different.
No, I
animal.
get
I don't
that.
think you should be lighting highways based on spillover from the adjacent
true.
commercial.
If anything, I
Yeah.
think that it wouldn't work, that really what we're touching on here is that we need appropriate lighting where we need it,
Right.
and we need to reduce or limit excess lighting where it's not needed.
Correct.
And so, I think that where pedestrians are in danger, that is the perfect place to add more lighting, and big empty parking lots that aren't being used can use less of it.
Right, but when someone's crossing from one plaza to another multi-dwelling complex, and there's, we have these restrictions on lighting, and there's no ambient light around that area,
Yeah.
that's the
Dangerous.
issue.
As the councilman
Very
said,
dangerous.
just on the Old Hopewell, if you look at, I saw somebody nearly get hit the other day from the Stone Gate, going to the Gulf where
Yep.
there's a convenience store, right? And in fact, if you drive by right now, you see that there's 2 milk cartons sitting right in the
Yeah, in
medium
the
strip.
medium.
That's because that person was almost hit.
Yeah.
It dropped them and
So,
broke it.
That said, I hear what you're saying.
So, because there's
We
poor
can-
lighting,
Something that
so I
needs to
think
be-
we have to.
Absolutely, I mean, I had an issue on Route 9 on the way up here, right? You don't see the pedestrians until you've almost passed them.
Right.
And we do have
Exactly.
flexibility. It's, you're talking about the signs, the planning board did allow, John Lawrence at his plaza to put a bigger sign in, right, Barbara? Because you couldn't see it. You're driving 50 miles an hour by and, you get in an accident trying to
Right.
figure
And
out.
we have
Trying to see
changed
it, look at it.
things.
Yeah.
The old sign code was 25 feet back from your property line.
Right.
Except on Route 9, for example, sometimes your property line doesn't start for 25 or 30 feet, and then another 25 feet, it was near the building.
Right, Chase Bank sign would be in their lobby,
Right.
based on our code.
So we changed that 15 feet from pavement.
Right.
Or their property line. We've also increased the size, and we let the planning board now, in the matter of good design, allow a bigger
Right.
sign based
Right.
on what's going
Yeah.
on.
So, I think, Malcolm, you go back with our guidance, on a number of topics and, redraft this.
I
Jim,
just
you
have-
can probably give some
Sure,
specificity.
I just have
to
one
it.
question regarding G, regarding the colors.
The color temperature, yeah.
And my question is, I think the intent of this is to apply to just lighting fixtures, but the one question, and this kind of came out of the context of the canopy lighting,
Right.
for some of the gas stations. Can you have blue lighting on signs? Does this operate to prohibit?
No, so the color temperature is not really talking about when you talk about signs, you would have some kind of light bulb behind a colored translucent medium. The light would come through, and that's what.
But some of the signage now is actually just LED
with various colors.
So are you operating to prohibit a blue LED? Are you
Right.
operating to prohibit?
I think that signage would, that would kick over to the sign law, the signage provisions.
And
But
because the other issue too is like, I think, some businesses will have downwash lighting as an architectural enhancement. And, and that's, can be of various colors. Is that considered, does that fall within this or not?
I think that color temperature,
I mean, I think the intent of this is just for.
I would want to look at an
site lighting.
example of the
There's
LED
one that has
lighting
to
with,
be-
Yes.
with colored light that you're talking about. But color temperature is not really talking about the color of the light as much as it is talking about the wavelength of the light,
Well, I
the
think-
intensity of the light.
Yeah, so I think that, we've discussed a lot, we can
Yeah.
keep discussing a lot more.
Sure.
Jim, what is the appropriate thing to withdraw this one? Because we do have a lot of changes
Yeah,
to it. I think we
can
should
come back and reintroduce it.
reintroduce it at a
'Cause
later
it
point in
hasn't-
time.
right, It hasn't been introduced?
No,
Is that-
we've been having the
Yeah.
discussion, so I think, we could withdraw it, right? Do we need a resolution then to withdraw it or not?
No, because it
Joe, are
hasn't
you
been
okay
introduced.
without, I'm more asking Joe. Yeah, okay. So that's the intention of the board, is to withdraw this, come back.
Can we just quickly go through the rest to see if there's anything else you want taken out for
Yeah,
now?
could you give
Sure,
us
yeah.
the 2-second version
Yeah,
so we
go
can
ahead.
get through
Yeah,
this?
Yeah.
really.
I'm more fast.
This is another reason why we want you to come in and talk to us before there's a resolution in front of us. So we could take these one at a time and have the right discussions instead of this.
So,
And I'd like you to be part of these meetings also.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, as often as you'd like me to be here.
Right.
Yeah. So color temperature, that's G. We touched on that briefly. I don't know if we want to discuss that anymore. Adjustment of lighting levels, that's H. Just says that the planning board may require dimmers to reduce a site's lighting outside of its hours of operation, either out or dimmed to whatever is needed for purposes of safety. There's a specific section that discusses gas stations because we've had a lot of issues with overlit gas stations, and we've also got a lot of pushback from gas stations that want their
They
gas
need more
stations
lighting.
to be bright and shining and undeniably visible. There's a list of prohibitions, including uplighting, roof-mounted area lighting, laser lighting, searchlights for advertisement purposes, etc. Floodlights, neon rope trimming. Section K discusses maintenance requirements, and then L is the waiver section that Jim had mentioned earlier, essentially saying that the planning board can waive or modify any of these requirements for the purpose of good design.
So if I'm having a fashion show at Villa Borghese, right, and I want to have searchlights out in the front parking lot, are we not allowing that? Is there a permit process for that?
We have event permits, I haven't had one that wanted search.
I don't know if they can do that there because of the airport anyway, but I'm just saying hypothetically.
Right.
And they do, for aesthetic reasons, do have uplighting on the outside of the building, so are we preventing that?
Oh, and the Villa Borghese
Yeah.
lighting?
Well, that would be grandfathered in, but in future lighting design, yeah, we would be discouraging uplighting, yeah.
Unless
So-
they could show that it doesn't spread.
Unless we
they
waive,
can.
the planning board waives it for the purposes of good architectural design. If they came in and they said, this is how we've designed the building, we really think that it is worth it and that we have mitigated that lighting pollution in the following ways, the planning board would be able to waive those requirements.
Because you see a lot of the uplighting or landscape lighting, whatever you want to call it, that are done really well. And there's,
Yes.
it's contained within the footprint of what it's lighting, and then there's others that
are done very
Right.
poorly.
Really not.
Yeah,
so
and
good.
Buildings are 200 feet off of road,
Yeah.
and it
Right.
really just lights the gardening area around the building. And then
Right.
there are others that are like floodlights.
I mean, I
out to the
get
road.
why you want to
Right.
legislate that, but when you have event venues or you have, you know, locations that are having productions,
Sure.
right? I think you should have you know, the ability for that to occur.
Well, I think. we
Like
have
you said, you have an
permit.
So what do you want to do,
there.
like a
And the
permit
only thing that this
process?
would prevent would be, you know, you can't do that year-round to advertise your venue.
Right,
You
right.
can't do that when you don't have an event going on.
But
I don't know if it's-
why can't you go for a permit process then if you're going to do that,
Right.
right? Just go for a permit. You happy, you want to do an event over there for your business?
Well,
Do
not
a
only that,
permit
but I mean,
process.
if you go to
Rather
Bill-
than changing the law, because you're trying to get too many things into the law and you're going to make it so damn specific.
No, what I'm doing is, I'm just playing devil's advocate on this because I will get a phone call about this. You know, I have uplit buildings. You know, I got to be careful here because some of the things that we're trying to legislate against, I have done. I mean, I do productions. So if it's a one-time thing, if it's an event, I get it. That's a one-time thing. That's an event.
Right.
However, if you're running a venue and you uplight the outside of your building on Fridays and Saturday nights, because that's the style you're going for, I want to make sure we're not inadvertently making that illegal under our code.
Right, but you
So-
would be in front of the planning board with your site plan or amended site plan to show it that it doesn't affect the glare, say, on the road.
Okay.
Versus you coming, not you, but somebody coming in and saying, I'm having a wedding bridal show
Right.
this Saturday and I need an event permit, and it's a one and done.
Okay.
A weekend.
Got it. Thank you. We only have 87 more sections, guys.
No, we're almost done. Go ahead, Malcolm, keep going.
Almost.
Well, that brings us to the end of the lighting
Okay.
code, the lighting changes.
That was an hour.
Yeah. Section 240-30B, no more than 2 accessory buildings shall be permitted in any one-family residential district. No such accessory buildings shall have a footprint greater than 600 square feet, nor a height in excess of 20 feet. And then this is where the new language comes in. Except that for lots of 40,000 square feet or larger, one of the 2 accessory buildings may exceed 600 square feet to a maximum of 1,200 square feet in accordance with the following table. And I think that this was in response to something specific, right?
There is an enormous amount of variances, and some of them are on much larger lots. So a lot that's a third of an acre and one that's 3 acres should have more leeway on the 3-acre site. He probably has a lot more equipment to put in a garage. So that's what, this is giving more leeway to the bigger lots.
Yeah, so we've had a number of those from a ZBA perspective where, you know, for the 600 square foot that they want to do, sometimes, you know, the bigger properties, I mean, they could put 600 in there and you can't say anything about it because they have the 40,000 square feet. So I understand the purpose of doing this and making it 40,000 is now 800 square feet versus 600, so it makes sense. I mean, they're going to put two sixes in there anyway, so they're at 12.
The one thing though, this shouldn't apply in an agricultural district, because most barns are larger than 1,200 square feet.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that, you know, there are a number of hobby farm properties in the town, which, I mean, on the 600 square foot prohibition that was originally there was for smaller lots. But if you've got a lot of 5 acres, you know, 1,200 square feet is
It's not a big.
not a big footprint. And it's something that, you know, when the board had adopted this long ago, you know, I don't think it I mean, for those who sat on the zoning board, how many people have come, how many variances did we get to this? You know, 650 square feet.
Got a number
is
of them.
Basically a 2-car garage. But,
Yeah.
I mean, we had applications where somebody had 20 acres, you couldn't even see the house, you couldn't
Right.
see, you know, so, you know, and again, these were basically old farm properties.
Right, but this is where we need to understand what our objective is. We are supposed to legislate based on impact to other people, right? If somebody has a 20-acre property that you can't even see anything on the property, I have an issue with telling them that, you know, they can only have a 600 square foot outbuilding or something up there, because they're just gonna not, they're gonna just do what they want anyway.
And
So we need to-
you'll never know about it. 'cause
You'll never
it's-
know.
Yeah.
So, I do agree with this approach, though, where we have the lot size, based on, you know, R40, R80, 3 acre, 4 acre, 5. I get that, and then you adjust the square footage based on the size of the lot, which that tells me that we're looking at impact based on density, right? Lessens in theory as the lot gets bigger, right? So I believe that methodology is appropriate. If someone has an issue with this particular example, they can get a variance, correct?
Right,
That's right.
And this came about for a couple of reasons. We had a house in Rockingham, and they built a garage with a permit that was bigger than their house.
Well, just drive down Fowler House.
Well, there's a few of them.
Go
So
down,
the
go
point
down
is,
Osborne Hill.
South Fowler House, which I don't understand how that was even approved. There's a garage that's a two-car garage that's larger than the entire house.
Yeah.
Actually, Joey and I were walking during the election. I said, I don't even know how this even occurred. I mean,
so it either occurred before we changed the law to 600 max, or they received a variance.
yeah, I mean, it definitely doesn't fit, it doesn't appear too uniform.
Well, I mean, the other thing is technically, an accessory structure shouldn't be larger than the primary.
Well, this is
structure.
actually the structure. Somehow this single-family dwelling became, a two-car garage was added to it, but the two-car garage has more square footage than the single-family dwelling.
We had a couple of
The
those just
dwelling
like
is more
that.
than doubled in
It's
size.
it's
So then
crazy.
it's not an accessory building?
No,
No.
no.
No,
So
it's
I-
no longer.
That would not, that would,
Not on
that
this-
would
not
not be
here.
covered by this.
I'm just talking
because
theoretically.
The 600 provision here applies to a separate structure.
Right,
Yeah, I get
That's
that.
actually an addition to the
Does
existing
happen.
house.
yeah.
Seen it.
I'm just saying, from a matter of principle, it's like, okay, you live in this space, but your garage is twice the size of your living space, you know.
They store their cars in there, all the classic cars and stuff. That's what we had happen. ZBA saw
I
a number
get-
of those.
I get it, but
Yeah, I keep my cars there, right?
you're talking about a small, you know, postage stamp parcels, though, they're not.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I got you.
Would-
Quarter acre plan and,
Would the board like to see modifications to this section, or,
No,
I think
listen,
that's good.
I think we're good.
I think
This is fine.
there's a methodology in place here, which I think is good.
yeah, no, I think it makes
Agreed.
sense. Section 5, look to remove, make it non-mandatory. Section 6, the only changes regards fences. The fences and walls, retaining walls along the street frontages shall not exceed 4 feet in height. No fence shall be erected in such location or manner as to obstruct adequate sight distances for drivers, bicyclists, pedestrians, etc. Fences shall generally be set back 12 feet from the property line or the edge of the roadway pavement. However, placement and height of the fence shall be at the sole discretion of the zoning administrator based upon safety concerns for drivers.
What does that mean? Fences
Yeah,
shall
what is-
generally be set back. We never had a fence set back.
So basically, most of the roads in the town have 12 foot of road frontage that belongs to the town. And then
Right.
some people were putting the fence like a foot off on their side property, but it causes a sight distance problem at 6 feet high. So this only refers to front yards, not to the backyard. They can, you know, if you're not on a corner, your sides.
Oh,
The
front
problem is that a lot of people come to a point in the front and they block sight distance.
Okay.
So this is really to avoid accidents. We had
I get,
one
okay.
bus.
So I understand exactly why this is in here, because of that situation we were dealing
Should
with.
it be,
Yes.
should it be 4 feet or should it be lower?
But we picked 4 feet because most fences are,
4
when you
feet.
go out to Home Depot
Depot
and
to buy 'em,
Lowe's,
they're
are
like
4
Well,
4
feet
but
or
the
feet,
6
issue,
feet.
I mean, the issue is, as far as, okay, but,
And most
you
are
know,
slatted, so you
with
kind of.
respect to sight distances,
If you'd like, I can talk to Michael Galante, the traffic consultant, and have him weigh in on what height he would recommend based
because
on.
if you're sitting in a vehicle in your driveway,
Yeah.
4 feet is gonna block your sight line.
And doesn't this
believe-
speak to the corners where it has to come on the angle?
Mm.
So you can't, like, come to the corner 12 feet, you would have it where it slices so that
Yeah.
as the car, even a sedan pulls up,
Yeah, you're
that
not
fence
obstructing
is
the
on an angle
intersection.
so you can see up the
Yeah.
street.
I mean, this is still not going to correct the issue on Connor,
No, I don't
but
think.
that's already done.
The problem with that is he owns into the road.
And that the road doesn't meet specs, so the road's like 9 feet wide, and you have a blind turn, and my concern there is a pedestrian.
Correct.
That just happens to be standing there.
Yeah,
I don't think this is gonna address that, but this is gonna at least provide some improvement.
For
guidance, right?
95% of the town.
And let me just ask this question. This is only front property line, right?
If you're on a
So,
corner, you have two fronts.
so the folks that have fences in their backyard, we are not instituting setbacks on backyard property lines, correct?
No, on the property line, including the post.
And it's up to the
resident to know their property
resident.
line.
Yeah, this is where the resident needs to understand where their property line is.
Correct.
And if there's a dispute, that's between you and your neighbor.
Right.
Yep.
That's what I did. We, made sure it was where it's at. I gave myself a little buffer just in case, right? But I think it needs to be understood. It's not the town's job to handle that situation when your neighbor says you built your fence 2 feet onto my property. That, you guys have to figure that out.
And so whenever we get calls, everyone is instructed to tell them, if you're an interior lot, it has to be on your property, and it's your responsibility to know if you have easements.
Right.
So you should have a survey, because if you put the
Yep.
fence and it turns out it's in a drainage easement or
Gotta
some
take it
other
down.
type of easement, you're going to be removing it at
Yep.
your own expense.
Personal responsibility.
And corners, they always refer them to me,
There's a
so I can
concept.
explain to them at the corner that they can't go to the road.
Right.
Okay, good.
Just so I understand, fences on residential properties, not in the front, but on the side, can only be how high?
6
6 feet.
That's it,
That's
right?
it.
Right.
Thank you.
6 foot is a height anywhere in the town.
Okay,
for
and if they
residential.
go over that, thank you.
Well, some people run them up the hill, there's little tricks they try, but call
Or they
barbers.
put them on a wall, and build a 2 or 3.
They put a little dirt on there and,
Yep. Berm it.
Barbara knows all the tricks.
Okay. Malcolm.
Section C, we talked about earlier, and that's the garbage receptacles out on the road.
Yep.
We can skip past that.
If we can just, Malcolm, as Jim said before, make sure that the code speaks to the proper size of garbage receptacles, so we're not inadvertently making something illegal that's not.
I think we have to go into it, it's something that wasn't mentioned here, but go into something else.
It's a
and
different
mention.
definition section.
Yeah, it's in the definition
Yeah,
section,
so-
but we need to
It
amend
limit-
that.
It sets the maximum at 30 gallons,
Yeah,
and typically the recycling, I think, are 32 gallons.
Whatever it
and
is.
The largest ones that typically they use is 96 gallons.
just
Yeah.
understand that it's not all Royal. I mean, I got some.
Right, there's other
Somebody's
barriers.
there's a waste management one by my house, and then there's another one, another company too. So I want to make sure that we're not,
It seems to be an industry standard
Okay.
because they have the automated collection.
They have,
Yeah.
right.
So.
And you're not going to
that's
go
what they-
specific on
that's
who
what
the
they've left.
sanitation company is.
no, but I
anyway,
just want to
so-
make sure we're not, it doesn't look like, okay, we went by Royal standards and now,
Right.
somebody has waste management. Probably the same anyway, I would
It
imagine.
seems to be
Yeah.
an industry standard.
Yeah.
Last but not least.
Subdivision of land, discusses site easements. We've added language there. The easement shall provide that these areas be kept free of anything that would obstruct a clear line of sight, essentially adding teeth to the enforceability of those sight lines for the purposes of safety. That the holder of the fee title to the abutting street shall have the right to enter the easement area for the purposes of removing anything obstructing a clear line of sight. And then section 7 was removed, that was before you previously, regarding open burning. The issue had become that questions had arisen about its conformance with the DEC regulations, how it was going to fit in with the rest, because questions were raised and we were trying to get this before you in a timely manner. We decided to strike that, and of course that caused even more confusion because it looked like we were removing those sections from the code when we were just removing the proposed language from the draft that
Right, so
you
the,
would review.
so the open burning section remains the same, untouched.
Yes.
We still got to
Exactly.
get back to, every day there's another gray area with this open burning thing. And if we're going to put a burn permit, a burn pit at Schlott House, we need to make sure that it meets our definitions within.
Our own code.
Yeah, within the code. And people can't just go hang out at Schlott House and have a fire, in our burn pit. So we'll discuss this offline.
Yes.
Right now, from a fire department perspective, we're doing what we've done in the past. If somebody has an actual structure that they're sitting around with the kids and they're cooking marshmallows or s'mores, it's not a big deal. But if you're this person on New Hackensack Road the other night that decided to burn all their cabinets in the backyard higher than the house,
Yeah.
sorry, you gotta put that out. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at. That's how far away we are on this thing right now. So we need to nail this down at some point so we can actually have, you know, a 2022 version that we can be
And that we
enforceable.
can enforce, so
Yeah.
people can't burn their cabinets with.
Right now, we're just telling them to put it out. We're not trying to get people, you know, into court unless it's a multiple offender, but people don't understand what they can and cannot do. And, you know, we don't want to be, like I said at the last meeting, we don't want to be, you know, penalizing people for having a hot dog cookout in their backyard. You know?
Right.
On the site easements, just real quick, we've got a lot of, and I get it why we're doing this. There's a lot of blind corners because of obstructions. A lot of it is huge trees that are sitting on the corner of somebody's properties. I mean, are we just gonna allow them to stay as is, or we're gonna tell them they have to prune them, or?
Sometimes they're in the highway right away.
Well, because, you know,
There is-
like you drive down Kent Road, and I dare say every one of those corners, there's some old trees that have been there for a real long time, and you just can't see around the corner until you're on it, and like, you know, like to Bill's point to you before, you got pedestrians there and all. and-
Or a lot of bushes, and you're in a sedan, and the
Correct.
bushes are overgrown, and you
Yeah.
can't see past
I
them.
think the highway super has jurisdiction, right, Jim, on determining if that's a hazard or not, right?
Actually, I would think, under the highway law, theoretically, it would be, I think obstructions extend to visual obstructions,
Mhm.
not necessarily physical, limited to physical obstructions. I can look at that. So if you had, theoretically, under the highway law, if you had a tree that was on private property, that was obstructing the view, you could take it down. And I know we've had issues in the past where, you know, because there's a specific provision regarding trees that are in danger of falling into the right of way.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of those situations, that we've taken those down in the past, but, you know, to the point, and again, the tree is on private property, but has the potential to fall into the road, so under the law, the highway superintendent has jurisdiction to take that out. So you could do that, but, you know, also to your point, we've got a lot of them, so, you know, I think.
Well, let's, you know,
We could target it
let's
and look at it.
talk about it more, but let's,
Right.
you know, close up our discussion right now, because
Yeah.
we are getting
Yeah.
late. I think, you know, you guys understand what the intention of the
Got a lot
board
of
is.
notes to
We'll
incorporate, yeah.
have to have another discussion or two or more.
So I just looked at my cameras. You know we're having a snow that's sticking right now outside?
Yeah, well, that's
Oh,
what I
great,
said.
yeah.
That's great. You gotta ride home.
The worst
Get a
news-
hotel room.
The worst news, as Bill reminded us earlier today, is we have an event coming perhaps on Friday and Saturday.
It's possible. It's still quite a few days out, but we have a possible snow event coming
Yeah,
on Friday.
but anyway, let's move on. We withdraw that from now, and then let's go.
But thank you, Malcolm, though, I
Yeah.
want to say.
Thank you very much.
It was a
That's
pleasure.
why we wanted them here.
I
so we
appreciate
could-
this, like this going back and forth, maybe, you know, for future ones, we can have a specific, you know,
Exactly.
discussion item to go through everything, but I think I appreciate hearing your perspective, and I thank you.
Well, thank
No,
you.
we
Thank you
need to
very
have the
much.
planner here.
So when do we expect that we're going to have these updates? Because we should take a look at it before the next town board meeting, whether we're going to do it on the 14th or probably the 28th.
Probably the 28th, I think.
On the
is what
28th, we should have
target.
something ahead of time so we can look at it a week or so at least,
Right.
so that if we have any more questions or changes,
We
once
can
you've made your
address it.
changes, that we can go ahead and do that.
Well, you've got the meeting on the 14th, and you've got a meeting on the 28th.
Yeah, the 14th is our
14th is a
workshop.
workshop, so really the
why don't I aim
28th.
to get you something
By
for
the
your review
21st.
by the 14th, and then
I'd say 21st probably.
the
Well,
21st?
yeah,
No,
Week
we get it
ahead.
on the 14th, we get
You
to
could do
review
the
it, and we
14th,
can
you know, and,
give
and
feedback.
That's fine.
in fact, you know, you certainly should attend the workshop because other issues may come up with respect to planner opinion. So if you're able to provide it to us that night, then that would
That would
be
be
great, I
better.
think.
Yeah, that'd
And
be
if you
good.
can, Malcolm, if you can shoot us all an email, because I think some of our questions might be able to be answered
Right.
via email back
Yeah.
and forth, if we need clarification on certain things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be helpful, and of course, Barbara's always a great help too, but this way we can get a couple different perspectives on
Right.
where we're at.
Right.
Great.
And get you a draft by email, and then.
Yeah, because residents ask us, sometimes, I'll be honest with you, residents will
All the
ask me
time.
about something in here, and I won't know 100% what the intent of the legislative change is, so it's helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mel.
Okay, move on to Resolution 2022-43. This is a resolution authorizing the execution of the agreement for operation of carnival, rides, concessions, and amusements for the Town of Wappinger Fall Festival, also known as Community Day. Jessica? Thank you.
Everything is the same as last year, except the dates are changed to reflect the new dates of Columbus Day.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was happy with the way this rolled out, to be honest with you. I'll move this.
Second?
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion is approved.
That was easy.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
And Jessica, they are on board, right? You know, with what we want to do. We've already worked that, so,
It worked last year, so let's do it again.
yeah, okay. Next item, Resolution 2022-44. Barbara, this is a resolution authorizing the naming of private road for Chelsea Farm Division. This is called Bird Court. Simple, requested the developer. Yeah.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. Now, Mr. Frazier, the next one is Resolution 2022-45, resolution awarding contract for Town Hall boiler replacement. And this is the last time you can talk about replacements of our heating system.
Let's hope so.
You jinxed us last time.
Yeah, I mentioned at a previous meeting, one of the boilers upstairs has failed. The boiler section rotted out from the inside out. I anticipate the other one not too far behind it, so.
Well, I think Bob Travis and CPL are recommending we take care of these both. I don't want to be stuck like we were a couple of weeks ago.
The plan
Just do
is
it,
to
yes.
get a water treatment system in place prior to installing the boilers, but I want to get your approval tonight to start that equipment on the way here. So when it is done, we can throw it in.
Well, look,
right
we have
away.
to do it. There's no question.
So what kind of warranty do we have on these things? Because it seems like our warranties are not very good. So
Well,
what,
these boilers that were installed in 2007, I believe in 2007, typically you get a 2 to 3 year warranty on this equipment. The comptroller pointed out too that this quote that we have here is between $30,000 and $40,000 less than the boilers that were installed in 2007.
so I was looking at the contract, so some of the things it doesn't include, God forbid, they have to do premium time for the installation. If there's any permits or anything like that, that's not part of the contract. I would assume there's no permits they need to get.
Well, we
Or do
get
they?
permits, but there's no fee. The fee is waived.
Okay.
We do get the permits. The quote there is from Johnson Controls.
Mm-hmm.
We've had very good experience with them. They're a Sourcewell contractor, which means we can use their quotes without getting competitive bids. And, like the comptroller pointed out, that this seems to be a real good quote.
Well, we know you're really happy with Johnson, and I'd like to make the motion. I just have one. At some point, could we get somebody, maybe Johnson and CPL, to just go over our whole system with a fine tooth comb?
We're doing that
Doing
now.
that right now.
That
We
would
already
be-
have them.
Because it's like,
We're trying to work out the
and I
bugs
know.
from the previous contractor.
You just come to us with really bad news,
I
Steve.
know.
Yeah.
Believe me,
like you, but
I don't
you're
like it myself.
a bearer of
Well,
bad
what he
news.
doesn't like is when I shout at him, in the morning
Yeah,
hour.
it
And
is-
I have
it's
to
been
get
pretty
Tim moved
embarrassing.
on the phone.
I have
No, I
to
I
admit
think it's a good
it
idea that we do
has.
the entire system, because we want to find out what's coming down
When
the
do you
pike,
think we'll
because
have that?
we never seem to get
sorry?
headlights.
When do you think we'll have that?
I have not looked into that portion of it. The equipment next door came in within 6 weeks of
I thought
ordering
the
it.
contract said 16 to 18 weeks.
Okay.
So by the time you're ready to turn the air conditioning on, we'll have.
Hey,
We'll have heat. Yeah, yeah, there we go.
So
yeah, that's about right. Do I have a motion, Chris?
I'll move it.
Just,
Second.
just one minor change.
Yeah.
The two line should be 1620.200 instead of 253.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we adjust the line to 1620.200 and allocate the 59,843.
Okay, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions?
Just a question, procurement requirements
passed.
on this, or,
So source,
Motion passed.
so this is
oh, it's sourced?
through Sourcewell, which
Okay,
is
Sourcewell.
competitively bid.
Yep.
I believe this contract is a year old. and it includes maintenance and installation of equipment.
Okay.
Good.
So, and, you know, we had a discussion internally, was this to be a contract line or an equipment line? And then
Dutchess here.
to the discussion that was had regarding, you know, creating a list of the equipment and having, what Councilman Phillips had suggested, you know, one of the things that's good practice is to look at the equipment and depreciate it so you know what the useful life is, so that the board can budget for a future replacement.
Oh, that makes too much sense. I can't imagine how many boilers and furnaces I've sat on this dais and bought. But we gotta get this done, and, it's already been voted on, I think.
Right,
You
that's
all
right.
already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's voted on. Then you interjected.
I just was curious how it was, what the procurement process was.
That's
what it
fine.
Sourced, okay.
Yep. Okay, next resolution, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
And Tim, thank you for, you, Bob Travis, over the last couple of weeks while we enter these cold spells. Much appreciated. Resolution 2022-46, a resolution directing the assessor to continue certain real property tax exemption from 2021 roll. This is what we had discussed at our last board meeting, Christian's here, but this is where Governor Hochul had, announced, it was an executive order? Yes. Yeah, so, Christian, you have anything else to add? The board, I think, is familiar with it, just briefly.
No, I just, we do have people who file for the low-income senior citizens and for the low-income disabled persons. Last year, they made it mandatory, that they did not have to renew. We just took their exemption and moved it forward. This year, it's an opt-in. So my suggestion to the board would be that we definitely opt into it and keep our senior population, our disabled person population safe.
Does this
And,
okay, sorry.
And we just, whatever exemption they had last year, we just move forward to this year, and, maybe next year we'll get them to renew, but again, it's all the coronavirus.
So we don't know if they're gonna have to opt in every year after this year?
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, no, that's only if the government allows it. The
Okay.
law, as it's written now, mandates that a renewal is required. But last year, they made it mandatory that you did not have to renew.
Okay.
This year, the governor came out and said, it's gonna be an opt-in procedure.
But
So-
last year, this was done because of COVID.
COVID, right.
Right.
My understanding is the reason why there's a requirement for these individuals to re-register is because you have to attest that you're still alive, number one, and you have to attest that you're still the property owner.
Right.
Right, and also that your income is below the level.
Right, so,
Right.
I'm not gonna be critical of this particular resolution, but that's what we need to be conscious of that. There has to be a mechanism in place. It can't just be a blanket approval forever.
Again, that resolution provides that should the assessor have reason to believe that either the person has died.
Yeah, but
or
how'd
moved.
you do that, though? I mean,
Well, one, if the person moves, you'll
Oh.
get a.
A lot of times the property goes on the market when
Right.
someone passes away. It's more of a disabled, we do look at the obituaries.
well, we're only talking
Who
about
passed to
22
see
right
if they
now.
have exemptions.
Right.
We're only
Right,
talking
we're only
about,
talking about-
we're only talking about 22, so not to
Right.
belabor this, but we need to be conscious, because my original discussion on this was, why was it, why didn't we always have this? But
Now all
looking
of a sudden-
into it, it was determined that there is a level of attestation that has to occur. So I have no problem with this, but next year we'll talk about it again, I'm sure.
So how do you do the income verification then? You have no access, how do you do the income verification, right? Because you said it's also based on income?
Right. well,
How do
we're
you
not
do
doing
that?
it,
Because
so
you don't
it's
see
basically
anybody's,
saying-
you don't see
It's
people's
There's
tax
a
there.
form that
People
the
just-
state provides, right?
Well, that's
Or do
a
you-
different,
right.
the star exemption and the senior citizens exemption are different.
Right.
So, but in this
Right.
case, we're not doing income verification.
Okay,
We're basically
the-
saying, since you qualified in the prior year,
Yeah.
we're moving it forward and giving it to you this year as well.
we're
But in the
assuming
past,
that
they had to
nothing has
provide,
changed,
Right.
which
In
I
the past,
assume.
they
There's
provided
an
you the tax
assumption
return
there
that showed-
Copy of your return.
Right.
Right,
Most,
so-
I'm gonna say most people who qualify for this, the income's very low. Their income's usually pretty stagnant
Right.
because they don't have a lot of income to begin with.
I get that, it's more of a matter of principle. I'll move the resolution, but
Right.
we just have to understand that there is a reason why that mechanism existed previously.
Right.
Right.
I have a second?
Second,
Okay.
No, I
Motion's-
agree with you 100%, yeah.
There's motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. Thank
All
you,
right, thank
Christian, and thanks for
Thank you.
waiting around.
Not a problem.
So late. Okay, next resolution, 2022-47. This is a resolution establishing Town of Wappinger Veterans Advisory Group and appointing the chairman, who would be appointed as Kevin Hawthorne.
I'll move it.
I'll second this.
Okay, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. And the last one is a resolution acknowledging the correspondence log, which is Resolution 2022-48.
Move.
Second.
A motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. So next item is to go into executive session. Hopefully, we can keep it fairly short. Do I
Make
have
that
a motion?
Motion.
Motion second. Okay, motion second, all in favor?
What purpose?
Oh, the purpose is for contract, discussion, personnel issues and litigation.
Got it.
Thank you. So,